In what appeared to be an ordinary day, a mysterious virus surreptitiously spread throughout the city. Its origin remained unknown, but infection led to madness, the loss of reason, and transformation into zombie-like creatures. Initially, the gravity of the crisis went unheeded. Rumors circulated of bizarre incidents, individuals suddenly turning violent, assaulting others, their behavior devoid of humanity. However, the infection rate surged exponentially, plunging the city into pandemonium. Hospitals overflowed with the infected, doctors overwhelmed, the virus propagating far more rapidly than anticipated. Streets were littered with abandoned vehicles, some ablaze, billowing thick smoke. Zombies roamed aimlessly, emitting chilling howls. Driven by an instinctual hunger for the living, they swarmed any perceived target. The once thriving metropolis was now a veritable hellscape. Li Ming, an ordinary office worker, was fortunate enough to evade infection during this cataclysm. Along with a few fellow survivors, he sought refuge in a derelict building, clinging to the hope of survival. They scavenged for any available resources: food, water, and weapons. However, resources were finite, and with the ever-present threat of zombies lurking outside, each supply run became a perilous gamble with death. On one occasion, Li Ming and his companions ventured to a nearby supermarket in search of provisions. They navigated the zombie-infested streets with utmost caution, attempting to remain silent. Inside the supermarket, however, they inadvertently alerted a horde of zombies. The undead swarmed towards them, their roars deafening. Li Ming and his comrades brandished their weapons, engaging in a fierce struggle. Amidst the chaos of clashing metal and spraying blood, one of their own was tragically scratched by a zombie, succumbing to the virus. Overwhelmed by anguish and despair, they were forced to end their companion's life to prevent their transformation. As time wore on, the shadow of the apocalypse deepened. The government had collapsed, communication was severed, and the outside world remained an enigma. The survivors began to wonder if the viral crisis had engulfed the entire globe. They persevered in their despair, yearning for a miracle, for a cure to the virus, and a return to peace and tranquility. Yet, in this zombie-dominated world, hope dwindled with each passing day, each sunrise a fleeting reminder of the uncertainty of tomorrow. Li Ming rubbed his weary eyes, lifting his gaze from the computer screen. The office was eerily silent, save for the hum of a few computers, their screens displaying unfinished documents. Outside, the city was shrouded in gloom. Where once the streets bustled with traffic and lively noise, an unsettling quiet now permeated every corner. How many days has it been? What's happening out there? Xiao Zhang, sitting across from Li Ming, broke the silence, his voice trembling noticeably. Before Li Ming could respond, a piercing shriek echoed from below, followed by the shattering of glass. The group turned to the windows in terror, spotting several figures staggering toward the building. Their movements were erratic, their limbs contorted, one with a piece of torn flesh hanging from their arm, blood dripping continuously. "What are those things?" someone exclaimed. Before the words had faded, the company's main entrance was violently breached, and a swarm of zombies poured in. Their faces were grotesque, emanating a repulsive stench of decay. Their clouded eyes fixated on the living, and low growls rumbled from their throats. Li Ming's colleagues descended into chaos, their screams and cries intermingling. Li Ming's mind went blank, but the instinct for survival kicked in. He lunged toward the corner of the office, seizing a chair and smashing it against an approaching zombie. "Don't panic. Hold the line," he shouted, attempting to calm the group. Zhang Wei, a former soldier, appeared at Li Ming's side, his eyes resolute, a metal pipe clutched tightly in his hand. "Listen up, these things are slow. If we stay calm, we can fight them off." Zhang Wei's steady voice instilled a modicum of confidence in the panicked crowd. The zombies closed in relentlessly. Li Ming and Zhang Wei stood back to back, engaging in a desperate struggle. Each swing of their weapons was accompanied by the zombies' howls and the chilling sound of fracturing bones. Blood splattered the walls and floor, filling the air with a heavy, metallic scent. Amidst the chaos, Li Ming caught sight of a female colleague being seized by a zombie. She struggled desperately, her pleading eyes searching for help. Li Ming's heart pounded with urgency. He wanted to rush to her rescue, but several zombies blocked his path. "Hold on, we're coming," he yelled, swinging the chair with renewed vigor. Zhang Wei seized an opportunity, darting toward the besieged woman. The metal pipe whistled through the air, striking the zombie's head with brutal force. The zombie recoiled, releasing the woman. Zhang Wei pulled her behind him. "Get to safety," he shouted. As time passed, the group's strength waned, but the zombies continued to multiply. The office's defenses began to crumble, and people were increasingly scratched and bitten. Despair spread through the group, the shadow of death looming over everyone. Suddenly, a deafening crash resounded as a modified pickup truck smashed through the office window. The truck careened through the zombie horde, scattering them in its wake. A man leaned out of the driver's side, shouting, "Anyone who wants to live, get in." Li Ming recognized him as Wang Chong. The mechanical engineer, Li Ming, Zhang Wei, and the others rallied the survivors, rushing toward the pickup truck. They fought their way through the zombie onslaught, some tragically falling, their screams of despair echoing behind them. Li Ming gritted his teeth, pushing himself to the limit, finally reaching the truck. They helped each other climb aboard. Wang Chong floored the accelerator, the pickup truck surging forward like a wild horse, plowing through the remaining zombies and bursting out of the building. Li Ming glanced back, witnessing the office being overrun. Most of his former colleagues had not escaped the carnage. His heart was filled with grief and fury, but survival was paramount. The pickup truck sped through the zombie-infested streets, their fate in this apocalyptic world just beginning. The pickup truck careened through the chaotic streets, the apocalyptic landscape unfolding like a nightmare. Burning car wrecks billowed black smoke, darkening the sky. Zombies staggered through the ruins, drawn by the sound of the truck, turning their heads and lunging towards it, howling. What's happening? How did the world suddenly turn into this? A young woman in the back, named Xiao Yin, asked with a sob. She was an intern at the company, and the sudden disaster had shattered her life. Wang Chong gripped the steering wheel, his eyes focused on the road ahead, dodging obstacles as he replied, "Who knows? I heard it started with people going crazy, biting others, and then it spread like a disease, turning more and more people into those monsters." Li Ming, in the passenger seat, frowned, watching the approaching zombies with growing concern. "We need to find a safe place. The gas won't last forever, and we can't keep running from these things." Zhang Wei, sitting in the truck bed, gripped his iron pipe, alert to the surroundings. He looked back at the zombies and said, "I think we should check the residential area. Maybe we can find supplies and fortify a house." Everyone agreed. Wang Chong changed direction, heading towards the nearest residential area. However, the closer they got, the worse it became. The streets were filled with abandoned vehicles, some completely blocked, making it impossible to pass. "This is troublesome." Wang Chong sighed helplessly as he brought the vehicle to a halt. The others peered through the car windows, witnessing a throng of zombies slowly advancing towards them, their guttural moans echoing ominously, as if they were intent on devouring. "The living that we cannot remain here, resigned to our fate," Li Ming declared, his jaw clenched as he seized a wrench he had found in the car. "We must disembark and traverse this area on foot, seeking refuge in a secure building." With determination, everyone grasped whatever makeshift weapons they could find, cautiously opening the car doors. As they stepped outside, a wave of nauseating decay assaulted their senses, nearly prompting them to retch. The zombies, alerted to the presence of the living, surged forward with renewed fervor. Quickening their pace, Li Ming led the charge, flanked by Zhang Wei and Wang Chong on either side, while the other survivors followed closely behind. They brandished their weapons, engaging in fierce hand-to-hand combat with the encroaching undead. Each step forward was accompanied by the anguished cries of zombies and the splatter of blood. Xiao Yin, positioned in the midst of the group, trembled with fear. Suddenly, a zombie lunged from behind a nearby vehicle, barreling towards her. In a moment of terror, she let out a piercing scream, nearly losing her balance. Just as the creature was about to pounce, Zhang Wei, quick on his feet, swung a metal rod and sent the zombie reeling back. "Be careful. Stay close to the group," Zhang Wei shouted. The group struggled to weave their way through the horde of zombies, sustaining scrapes and bruises along the way. At last, they spotted a seemingly intact residential building. Li Ming sprinted ahead, forcefully pushing the door open, relieved to find it devoid of zombies for the moment. "Quickly, get inside," he called out. The others rushed into the building, while Zhang Wei and Wang Chong remained behind, using found debris to barricade the door, temporarily halting the pursuing undead. Once inside, the weary survivors collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. The harrowing escape had drained them both physically and mentally, yet they understood that the danger was far from over. They still needed to secure food and water while fortifying the building's defenses to survive in this apocalyptic world. In the dimly lit lobby, their heavy breaths mingled with the eerie, muted moans of the zombies outside, creating a haunting symphony. Li Ming was the first to rise, surveying their surroundings. The lobby was shrouded in shadows, the flickering lights casting an erratic glow, while corners were cluttered with debris, suffused with an air of long-forgotten desolation. On what appeared to be an ordinary day, a mysterious virus silently spread throughout the city. No one knew its origin, only that once infected, individuals would succumb to madness, losing their sanity and transforming into mindless, zombie-like creatures. Initially, the severity of this crisis went unrecognized. Reports of bizarre incidents surfaced, people suddenly going berserk and attacking others, their actions devoid of humanity. However, the number of infections soon escalated exponentially, plunging the city into chaos. Hospitals overflowed with the afflicted, and doctors were rendered powerless, the virus's transmission speed far exceeding all expectations. On the streets, cars lay strewn haphazardly, some still ablaze, emitting billowing clouds of smoke. The zombies wandered aimlessly, emitting chilling howls. They possessed an instinctual desire to attack the living, and upon spotting a target, would converge upon it. Once a thriving metropolis, the city had now devolved into a veritable hell on earth. Li Ming, an ordinary office worker, was fortunate enough to remain uninfected amidst this apocalyptic disaster. He, along with a few other survivors, took refuge in an abandoned building, desperately seeking hope for survival. They scavenged for any resources they could find: food, water, and weapons. However, resources were scarce, and the ever-watchful zombies posed a constant threat. Every excursion to gather supplies felt like a life-or-death gamble. One day, in pursuit of more food, Li Ming and his companions resolved to venture into a nearby supermarket. They cautiously traversed the zombie-infested streets, attempting to make as little noise as possible. Yet, within the supermarket, they inadvertently attracted a horde of zombies. The creatures charged towards them with ear-splitting roars. Li Ming and his comrades brandished their weapons and engaged in a fierce battle against the undead. Amidst the chaos, blood splattered, and one of their companions was tragically scratched by a zombie, becoming infected. In anguish and despair, they were forced to take their friend and Apos' life to prevent him from becoming one of the monsters. As time passed, the shadow of the apocalypse deepened. The government had collapsed. Communication lines severed, leaving the survivors in ignorance of the outside world. They began to suspect that this viral catastrophe had engulfed the entire globe. Clinging to despair, they held on to the hope of a miracle, yearning to discover a cure for the virus and restore peace and tranquility. Yet, in this zombie-dominated world, hope seemed increasingly distant. And with each sunrise, uncertainty loomed over the possibility of witnessing another day. Li Ming rubbed his weary eyes and lifted his gaze from the computer screen. The office was enveloped in silence, punctuated only by the hum of a few remaining computers, their screens flickering with unfinished documents. Outside, a pall of gloom shrouded the city. At this hour, the streets would typically be bustling with activity, but now an eerie stillness pervaded every corner. How many days has it been? What is happening out there? The voice of Xiao Zhang, seated across from Li Ming, trembled, shattering the silence. Before Li Ming could respond, a piercing scream echoed from downstairs, followed by the sound of shattering glass. The group turned in terror towards the window, witnessing several figures staggering toward the office building, their movements unsteady, their bodies grotesquely contorted. One had a torn piece of flesh hanging from an arm, blood dripping incessantly. What are those things? Someone gasped, before the question could be fully voiced. The office door was violently burst open, and a swarm of zombies surged in. Their grotesque visages exuded a repulsive stench, and their murky eyes bore down on the living, emitting guttural growls. Panic erupted among Li Ming and Apos' colleagues, screams and cries intertwining in a cacophony of fear. Li Ming and Apos' mind went blank, but the instinct for survival propelled him to act swiftly. He dashed to the corner of the office, seized a chair, and hurled it towards the nearest zombie. Everyone, stay calm. Defend this place, he shouted, striving to steady the group's fraying nerves. Veteran Zhang Wei had appeared by Li Ming's side, his expression resolute, clutching a metal rod tightly. Listen, these creatures are sluggish. If we remain calm, we can repel them. His steady voice instilled a glimmer of confidence among the terrified crowd. As the zombies pressed closer, Li Ming and Zhang Wei stood back to back, engaging in a desperate struggle against the undead. Each swing of their weapons was met with the zombies and Apos' howls and the sickening sound of breaking bones. Blood splattered across the walls and floor, and the air thickened with the metallic scent of gore. In the midst of the mayhem, Li Ming glimpsed a female colleague ensnared by a zombie, desperately struggling. Her pleading gaze directed at the group. His heart raced with urgency as he yearned to rush to her aid, yet several zombies obstructed his path. Hold on, we're coming, he shouted, swinging the chair with renewed vigor. Seizing the moment, Zhang Wei darted towards the besieged woman, the metal rod slicing through the air as it struck the zombie and Apos' head with a resounding crack. The creature recoiled in pain, releasing its grip on her. Get to safety, he urged, pulling her behind him. As time wore on, fatigue began to weigh heavily on the group, while the number of zombies continued to swell. The office and Apos' defenses began to crumble, with more individuals succumbing to bites and scratches. Despair spread among the survivors, the specter of death looming over them all. Suddenly, a deafening crash resounded as a modified pickup truck smashed through the office window. The vehicle barreled through the horde, sending zombies sprawling in all directions. The door swung open, and a man leaned out, shouting, "If you want to live, get in." Li Ming squinted in recognition. It was mechanical engineer Wang Chong. Li Ming, Zhang Wei, and the others immediately beckoned the survivors towards the truck. They fought their way through the onslaught of zombies, some tragically falling victim along the way, their screams echoing in despair. Gritting his teeth, Li Ming summoned every ounce of strength, finally reaching the pickup's side. With frantic urgency, they helped one another aboard the vehicle. Wang Chong slammed on the gas, and the truck surged forward like a wild stallion, crashing through the zombies that barred their path, escaping the confines of the office building. Looking back, Li Ming saw the company engulfed by the undead, a haunting vision of former colleagues, most of whom had perished in this catastrophe. His heart swelled with grief and anger, yet in this moment, survival was paramount. The pickup truck sped through the debris-laden streets, their fates entwined amidst this dystopian world, barely beginning to unfold. As the truck careened through the chaotic thoroughfares, the apocalyptic landscape flashed by like a nightmare. The remnants of burning vehicles belched thick black smoke. Darkening the sky, zombies stumbled through the ruins, drawn by the sound of the truck, turning to howl in pursuit. What on earth is happening? How did the world suddenly become like this? A young girl seated in the back, her voice quivering with fear, asked. Her name was Xiaoyan, a former intern whose life had shattered in an instant due to this unforeseen calamity. Wang Chang gripped the steering wheel, his gaze fixed intently ahead as he navigated the obstacles in their path. Who knows? I heard it started with someone going inexplicably mad, biting anyone in sight, and then, like a contagion, more and more people transformed into those monsters. Li Ming, seated in the passenger seat, furrowed his brow, anxiety gnawing at him as he observed the encroaching zombies. We need to find a safe place. The fuel in this truck won't last long. And if we continue being pursued like this, it's only a matter of time before we're in trouble. Zhang Wei, vigilant with his metal rod in hand, turned to survey the zombie horde trailing behind. I think we should head to a residential area. Perhaps we can find some supplies and a house to hide in, fortifying our defenses. The group nodded in agreement. Wang Chong adjusted the steering wheel, directing them towards the nearest residential district. However, as they drew closer, the situation deteriorated further. The streets were choked with abandoned vehicles, some areas completely blocked, rendering passage impossible. Now we have a problem. Wang Chong let out a helpless sigh and brought the vehicle to a halt. The group peered through the windows, witnessing a horde of zombies slowly drawing nearer, their guttural moans resonating ominously, as if they were about to engulf them. They could not remain idle in the face of such peril. Li Ming gritted his teeth and seized a wrench he had found in the car. We must disembark and traverse this area on foot, seeking a secure shelter, he declared. The others hastily armed themselves with makeshift weapons and cautiously opened the car doors. As they stepped outside, a strong stench of decay assaulted their senses, nearly inducing nausea. The zombies, sensing the presence of the living, became invigorated and quickened their pace towards the group. Li Ming took the lead, flanked by Zhang Wei and Wang Chong on either side, while the other survivors closely followed. They swung their weapons, engaging in close combat with the encroaching zombies. Each step forward was accompanied by the wails of the undead and splatters of blood. Xiaoyan, positioned in the middle of the group, trembled in fear. Suddenly, a zombie lunged out from behind a nearby vehicle, charging directly at her. With a terrified scream, she nearly stumbled in panic. Just as the zombie was about to pounce, Zhang Wei reacted swiftly, swinging a metal rod and knocking the creature back. Be cautious. Stay close to the group, he shouted. The group struggled to navigate through the throng of zombies, sustaining scrapes and bruises along the way. At last, they spotted a relatively intact residential building. Li Ming dashed forward, forcefully pushing the door open, and discovered, for the moment, a lack of undead within. Quickly, enter, he shouted. The group rushed inside, while Zhang Wei and Wang Chong remained behind to barricade the door with found debris, temporarily stalling the pursuit of the zombies. Once inside, they collapsed onto the floor, panting heavily. The escape had drained them physically and mentally, yet they were acutely aware that the danger was far from over. They needed to find food and water and further fortify the building's defenses to survive in this apocalyptic world. While resting in the dimly lit lobby, their labored breaths intertwined with the distant, haunting moans of the zombies outside, creating a sinister symphony. Li Ming was the first to rise, surveying the surroundings. The lobby was shrouded in gloom, with flickering lights casting eerie shadows and clutter amassed in the corners, permeating the air with a musty odor. Do not let your guard down. Although we have momentarily evaded those outside, there may be dangers lurking within this building, Li Ming cautioned in a hushed tone. Zhang Wei and Wang Chong nodded in agreement, gripping their weapons tightly as they vigilantly scanned their surroundings. Xiao Yan, rising from the ground, still bore the marks of fear in her eyes but strove to compose herself. What should we do now? Is there food in this building? Her voice trembled, laden with anxiety for the unknown. Let us search, Li Ming replied. We will split into 2 groups. One will ascend to check the rooms above for any usable supplies, while the other will remain below to reinforce our defenses. The group quickly acquiesced, dividing into 2 teams. Li Ming led Xiao Yan and 2 other survivors upstairs. They ascended the staircase cautiously, each step taken with trepidation, wary of any hidden threats. The hallway was eerily silent, their soft footfalls echoing ominously. Upon reaching the 2nd floor, Li Ming gently pushed open a door. The hinges creaked loudly, shattering the stillness of the environment. Inside, chaos reigned, a room in disarray, furniture overturned, and clothing strewn across the floor. Xiao Yan covered her nose as a faint odor of decay filled the air. It appears this place has been ransacked, Li Ming noted, frowning as he meticulously searched every corner in hopes of uncovering any overlooked supplies. Alas, he found nothing. They proceeded to inspect other rooms, finding similar results. Most had been stripped bare. Meanwhile, Zhang Wei and Wang Chong led the remaining survivors downstairs to fortify their defenses. They barricaded the door with tables, chairs, and heavy furniture, and sought wooden planks to seal the windows. Outside, the zombies relentlessly crashed against the door, producing a dull thud that reverberated in their hearts. This door won't hold for long, Wang Chong panted, straining with the furniture. Zhang Wei nodded, determination in his eyes. We must hold out for now. Once we secure enough supplies, we can devise a plan to relocate. At that moment, a scream echoed from upstairs. Li Ming and the others immediately tensed, rushing toward the source of the sound. It turned out that Xiao Yan had discovered a corpse in one of the rooms, its body beginning to rot, emitting a repulsive stench which sent her recoiling in horror. Fear not, it is merely a corpse, Li Ming reassured her, carefully inspecting the body. The victim bore numerous bite marks, clearly having succumbed to a zombie attack. Judging by the state of the wounds, death had occurred not long ago. Be cautious. There may still be zombies nearby, Li Ming warned. The group gripped their weapons tightly, anxiously scanning their surroundings. Just then, a faint rustling sound emanated from the adjacent room. As if something was moving, Li Ming exchanged glances with the others, inching closer to the source of the noise, sensing an impending crisis lurking just out of sight. Their survival ordeal in this apocalyptic landscape had only just begun. Li Ming and his companions clutched their rudimentary weapons tightly, sweat trickling down their foreheads, mingling with the tense atmosphere that hung heavily in the air. The sounds from the neighboring room grew more pronounced, creaking and scraping as if a heavy object was shifting, each noise striking at their frayed nerves. Li Ming took a deep breath, signaling to the others to prepare themselves. He cautiously approached the door, which loomed ominously, as though it led to an abyss of fear. Just as his hand was about to grasp the doorknob, a tremendous force slammed the door open, and a grotesque zombie charged out, roaring with ferocity. This zombie was towering, its skin a ghastly gray, parts of it already rotting away to reveal stark, white bones beneath. Its eyes, clouded and devoid of life, burned with a ravenous hunger, and its mouth was filled with yellowed fangs, exuding a suffocating stench. Be careful, Li Ming shouted, swinging the wrench toward the creature's head. The zombie dodged effortlessly, its emaciated yet powerful arm reaching for Li Ming. He deftly evaded, the zombie's claws grazing his clothing. Xiao Yan, pale with fear, trembled uncontrollably beside him, yet she stifled her terror, fearing it might attract more danger. The other 2 survivors joined the fray, wielding their makeshift clubs in an attempt to subdue the beast. However, the zombie and Oppo's strength and speed far exceeded their expectations. Each of their attacks was effortlessly countered, and the situation began to tilt against them. Below, Zhang Wei and Wang Chong heard the commotion of battle erupting upstairs, their hearts sinking. This is bad. They may be in trouble, Zhang Wei exclaimed, ready to charge up the stairs. Wang Chang grabbed his arm, urging caution. Wait, if we leave, this door won't hold. And if the zombies burst in, we're all done for. Zhang Wei gritted his teeth, anxiety gnawing at him, but reason prevailed. Wang Chong was right. Upstairs, the struggle between Li Ming and his companions and the zombie escalated to a fever pitch. The creature became increasingly frenzied, launching relentless attacks. One survivor, while evading the zombie, stumbled and fell. The zombie seized the opportunity, biting into his arm. The survivor screamed in agony, thrashing desperately. Li Ming, frantic, spotted an opening and summoned all his strength to bring the wrench down upon the zombie's skull. With a sickening crack, the creature's head splintered, and it staggered before collapsing to the floor. Exhausted, Li Ming and his companions sank to the ground, panting heavily, their clothes soaked with sweat. The injured survivor groaned in agony, blood gushing from his arm, the flesh at the wound torn grotesquely by a zombie. Li Ming gazed at his wounded companion, his heart heavy with helplessness and sorrow. He understood the implications of a zombie bite, yet he tore a corner from his clothing to bandage the wound. "Hold on. We will find a way," he reassured his companion, his voice trembling. Outside, the relentless pounding of zombies against the door grew fiercer, shaking the entire building. Li Ming and the others realized that their refuge was no longer safe. They needed to make a swift decision to seek a more secure shelter, or death awaited them. As they took a brief respite on the upper floor, the horrific state of their injured companion and the escalating chaos outside felt like two mountains pressing upon them. Li Ming, summoning his weary strength, helped his wounded comrade to his feet, his gaze resolute yet laden with worry. "We can't linger any longer. This building won't hold. We must find a new place," he urged. The others nodded in agreement, their faces etched with exhaustion and uncertainty about the future. Below, Zhang Wei and Wang Chong had fortified their defenses to the limit, yet the door trembled under the continuous assault of the zombies, wooden planks splintering and debris flying. Wang Chong, watching the imminent collapse of their barricade, shouted anxiously to the upper floor, "Hurry down. The door can't withstand much longer." His voice was laced with unprecedented tension. Carefully, Li Ming and his group assisted their injured companion down the stairs, each step a monumental challenge. As they reached the first-floor hall, a thunderous crash echoed. The door finally succumbed to the pressure, flung open by a horde of howling zombies. Their murky eyes locking onto the survivors, a foul stench pervading the hall. "Run! To the vehicle!" Li Ming bellowed, brandishing a wrench as he charged into the throng of zombies, attempting to carve a path through the chaos. Zhang Wei and Wang Chong swiftly joined the fray. Wielding iron rods and wooden planks, each strike accompanied by the anguished cries of the undead and splattering of putrid blood. Xiaoyan and the other survivors followed closely. Terror and determination etched in their eyes. They fought and retreated, gradually nearing the pickup truck parked not far away. However, before they could catch their breath, a group of armed individuals burst from the nearby ruins, encircling them. Leading the group was a burly, bald man with a face full of menace, who sneered as he surveyed them. "Want to leave? Not so easy. Leave your belongings and the vehicle, and maybe we'll spare your lives." Li Ming and Appo's heart sank. He understood they were caught between two threats, zombies and these unwelcome intruders. Yet he stood firm, gripping the wrench tightly, glaring at the bald man. "We fought hard for our belongings and our vehicle. If you want them, you'll have to take them." The bald man's expression darkened at Li Ming's defiance. And with a wave of his hand, his subordinates raised their weapons, the tension in the air palpable. Simultaneously, the encroaching horde of zombies pressed closer, their low growls echoing ominously, casting a shadow of death over the survivors. They found themselves in a dire predicament, each second brimming with uncertainty and peril. In this life and death moment, time seemed to freeze, stretching each second into eternity. Li Ming and Appo's heart raced, blood surging through his veins as he flicked his gaze between the bald man and the advancing zombies, his mind racing to devise an escape plan. Beside him, Zhang Wei's muscles tensed, his grip on the iron rod tightening, knuckles whitening in preparation for a fierce battle. Wang Chong positioned himself slightly sideways, shielding the injured companion and other survivors, determination evident in his gaze. The bald man grinned, exposing yellowed teeth, and sneered, "Kid, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. You think a few of you can stand against us? Be sensible and hand over your stuff." His followers echoed his threats, brandishing their clubs and knives, eager to seize Li Ming and his group as supplies. Li Ming took a deep breath, striving to calm himself. "Do you really believe you can succeed in this? No one is taking our belongings today." As he spoke, he subtly surveyed the surroundings for a potential escape route. Suddenly, he spotted a narrow alleyway not far away, perhaps a means to evade their current predicament. Just as tensions escalated, the zombies drew nearer, their rotting arms reaching out, emitting chilling growls. The bald man and Appo's expression shifted slightly, realizing the grave threat posed by the undead. He glared at Li Ming, barking, "Brothers, deal with these zombies first. Then we'll handle them." Without hesitation, he led his men into the fray against the zombies. Seizing the opportunity, Li Ming shouted to his companions, "Go!" Rushed to the alley. Under his leadership, they sprinted towards the alley with all their might. Zhang Wei and Wang Chong flanked the group, using their weapons to fend off both the approaching zombies and robbers, ensuring a safe passage. Xiaoyan clung to the injured companion, her steps unsteady yet relentless, sweat and tears mingling on her face. In the heat of battle, Li Ming began to discern that these robbers were not merely a ragtag bunch. Their coordination was impressive. Their attacks on the zombies appeared practiced, not the clumsy efforts of a makeshift group. But there was no time to ponder this now. He needed to lead his companions to safety. They finally burst into the alley, the sounds of conflict fading behind them. The alley was narrow and dimly lit, walls stained with grime, debris littering the ground. They stumbled forward, unwilling to pause for even a moment. After running a short distance, Li Ming glanced back to confirm they had temporarily evaded their pursuers, then sighed in relief, signaling for everyone to rest. Phew, we are safe for now, he gasped. The group collapsed onto the ground, utterly fatigued. The wound of the injured companion had reopened, blood soaking through the makeshift bandage, his complexion growing increasingly pale. Lin Yu stepped forward to redress the wound, concern etched in her eyes. Who are these people? Wang Chong frowned, filled with doubt. Li Ming shook his head. I don't know, but they are certainly not ordinary. However, now is not the time to dwell on that. We need to find a new safe place and a way to treat him. His gaze was steadfast as he looked at the injured companion. Just then, a faint sound of footsteps echoed from the depths of the alley, and the group instantly tensed, clutching their weapons, bracing for a new threat. In this apocalyptic world, every crisis seemed to conceal more unknown mysteries and dangers, and their struggle for survival had only just begun. The atmosphere in the alley was thick with tension, each survivor gripping their weapon tightly, eyes fixed on the source of the approaching footsteps. Each soft sound resonated like a hammer striking their hearts. Li Ming and Appo's palms were slick with sweat. He subtly shifted, positioning the injured companion behind him, signaling to the others to prepare for combat. As the footsteps grew closer, a figure slowly emerged from the shadows. It was a lithe man clad in a tattered but clean black trench coat, a mask covering half his face, revealing only a pair of sharp, hawkish eyes. He bore a long knife on his back and a handgun at his waist, standing out as a mysterious presence against the bleak backdrop of the apocalypse. Who are you? The man inquired, his voice low and calm, breaking the silence. Li Ming did not respond immediately but retorted, Who are you? Why are you here? His tone was filled with caution. The man raised his head slightly, scanning the group as if assessing their strength and condition. My name is Chen Feng, merely a soul striving for survival in this apocalyptic world. Upon witnessing your distress against the zombies and that band of marauders, I felt compelled to approach. His response was succinct yet clear. Hearing Chen Feng's words, the group and Appo's vigilance eased somewhat. Li Ming scrutinized Chen Feng, hesitating for a moment before speaking. We are survivors who fled our company, having faced numerous dangers along the way, and my companion is injured. His gaze shifted to the wounded comrade, worry evident in his eyes. Chen Feng stepped forward, examining the injured companion's wound, his brow furrowing. The infection was severe, and in this desolate world, without proper medicine, he would not last long. His words cast a heavier gloom over the group. What shall we do? We cannot simply watch him die, Xiaoyan exclaimed anxiously, tears welling in her eyes. After a brief silence, Chen Feng said, I know of a place that may have medicine and a safe refuge. However, the journey is perilous and long. Are you willing to follow me? The group exchanged glances, their eyes filled with hesitation and inner conflict. On one hand, they yearned for a safe haven to tend to their injured comrade. On the other, they knew little of Chen Feng and questioned whether they could trust him. Why should I believe you? Li Ming asked, locking eyes with Chen Feng. Chen Feng let out a slight cold laugh and replied, Believe it or not, it is your choice. If you remain here, you will inevitably be found by the zombies or those bandits, and none of you will survive. Though his words were harsh, they rang true. After a fierce internal struggle, Li Ming finally nodded. Very well, we will follow you. But if you dare to deceive us, we will not spare you. His tone was resolute. Chen Feng did not respond, merely turning and walking deeper into the alley. The group followed behind, weary bodies embarking on a new journey. Along the way, Chen Feng remained alert, frequently reminding the others to evade zombies and other potential threats. As they traversed an abandoned commercial district, they encountered a small horde of zombies. The creatures, alerted by the commotion, staggered towards them. Chen Feng swiftly drew his long knife, his movements ghostly as he charged into the throng. His blade danced with precision, each strike landing squarely on the zombies' vital points, and in an instant, the threat was neutralized. Li Ming and the others watched in silent admiration at Chen Feng's skill. What did you do before? How are you so formidable? Zhang Wei could not help but inquire. Chen Feng sheathed his knife, replying casually, The past is no longer of consequence. Our sole objective now is survival. His response plunged the group into contemplation. As dusk descended, they finally arrived at a seemingly safer abandoned warehouse. Chen Feng signaled for them to rest here for the night, planning to resume their journey come dawn. Exhausted, they collapsed onto the ground, quickly drifting into slumber. Yet Li Ming found sleep elusive, gazing at the pitch-black night sky outside the warehouse, his heart heavy with both dread and anticipation for the future. In this world of despair, what fate awaited them in their encounter with Chen Feng? What challenges lay ahead on this new journey? All remained shrouded in uncertainty. Inside the abandoned warehouse, an eerie silence enveloped them, broken only by the rhythmic sound of their breaths echoing in the vast space. Li Ming lay on the hard floor, eyes wide open, staring at the dilapidated beams above, his thoughts a tangled mess. His companions had succumbed to deep sleep, utterly drained from the day's harrowing trials. Suddenly, a faint rustling sound emanated from the depths of the warehouse, shattering the stillness. Li Ming instantly tensed, his body coiling with alertness. He slowly sat up, gripping the wrench beside him. The sound was intermittent and elusive, as if something was stealthily moving in the dark. Li Ming strained to listen, attempting to discern the source of the noise, his heart pounding fiercely in his chest. Carefully, he rose, trying to make no sound, and moved towards the direction of the disturbance. The musty air of the warehouse, mingled with dust and decay, irritated his throat. Bathed in the dim moonlight filtering through the broken roof, he caught sight of a massive shadow swaying in the corner. "Who is there?" Li Ming whispered, his voice trembling slightly. Yet, the only response was that eerie rustling, growing increasingly frantic. At that moment, a hand gently landed on Li Ming's shoulder, causing him to flinch in fright, nearly crying out. Turning, he found it was Chen Feng. Chen Feng placed a finger over his lips, signaling for silence, then gestured for Li Ming to follow. The two crouched low, inching closer to the shadow. As they drew nearer, they finally discerned the true form of the shadow, a gargantuan mutated zombie. This creature towered over ordinary zombies, its muscles bulging, skin exhibiting a bizarre dark red hue, exuding a pungent stench of decay. Its eyes glimmered ominously, fixating on the two, emitting a low growl. Li Ming's grip on the wrench tightened in trepidation, while Chen Feng swiftly unsheathed his long knife, determination glinting in his gaze. The mutated zombie lunged first, leaping towards them with astonishing speed. Chen Feng sidestepped, his knife slicing through the air, striking the zombie's arm. The beast roared in pain, black blood oozing from the wound. Seizing the moment, Li Ming swung the wrench, crashing it against the zombie's head. However, the creature and Apos' skull was extraordinarily resilient, and the blow merely caused it to stagger, not inflicting any fatal damage. The zombie, enraged, turned its attention to Li Ming, lunging with its gaping maw, revealing sharp fangs. Chen Feng reacted swiftly, rushing forward to deliver a deep cut across the zombie and Apos' back. The creature writhed in agony, pivoting to attack Chen Feng once more. The two engaged in a fierce struggle against the mutated zombie, each strike accompanied by the creature and Apos' roars and their labored breaths. In a brief respite, Li Ming could not contain his curiosity and asked, "Chen Feng, who exactly are you? How did you acquire such skill?" Chen Feng dodged the zombie's assault as he replied, "I was once a special forces soldier, undertaking various perilous missions. When the apocalypse struck, I relied on my abilities to survive in this brutal world." At that moment, Zhang Wei and Wang Chang, awakened by the commotion, grabbed their weapons and joined the fray. United, they finally subdued the mutated zombie, which collapsed with a resounding thud, stirring up a cloud of dust. In the aftermath of the battle, the group gained a deeper understanding of Chen Feng's background, simultaneously realizing the myriad hidden dangers lurking in this apocalyptic realm, and that their journey was destined to be fraught with hardship and challenges. As the dust settled around the fallen, mutated zombie, the warehouse became permeated with a heavy stench of blood and decay. The group slumped to the ground, gasping for breath, sweat mingling with blood trickling down their faces, exhaustion washing over them like a tidal wave. Li Ming discarded the wrench, now smeared with blackened blood, bracing himself on the ground as he gazed towards the sky outside the warehouse, now tinged with the first light of dawn. After a night of fierce combat, they finally welcomed the new day, yet the dawn did little to dispel the shadows in his heart. "Is everyone all right?" Li Ming rasped, turning to his companions. Zhang Wei stood, stretching his stiff shoulders. "I'm fine, just a bit drained." Wang Chang brushed off the dust from his clothes, his gaze landing on Chen Feng. "Thank you, Chen Feng. If it weren't and Apos' for you and Li Ming holding the fort, we truly would have struggled against that beast." Chen Feng silently sheathed his knife, the remnants of black blood dripping from the blade, forming a dark stain on the ground, and he merely nodded in acknowledgement, choosing not to speak. At this moment, Xiaoyan had arrived beside her injured companion. She gently untied the bandage, now soaked anew with blood, and gazed at the horrifying wound that had begun to fester. Her eyes glistened with tears as she spoke in a trembling voice. "The injury has worsened significantly. We must find medical supplies swiftly." The group's attention fixed on their comrade's pallid face, and the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Li Ming took a deep breath, rising to his feet and surveying the surroundings. "Everyone, do not rest for too long. Since we have decided to follow Chen Feng to that place which might hold medicine and a safe haven, we must prepare ourselves promptly." With that, he strode towards the pickup truck, opening the door to inspect their supplies. Inside, the inventory was alarmingly scant. Only a few bottles of water remained, and merely a handful of compressed biscuits were left. Zhang Wei and Wang Chang joined him, assisting in organizing the meager supplies. Zhang Wei frowned, stating, "With just this, we won't and Apos' last long." Wang Chong mirrored his concern. We have no idea what we might encounter on the road. These supplies are far from sufficient. Li Ming gritted his teeth. We'll take what we have and find more along the way. We cannot simply wait for our doom. Meanwhile, Qin Feng rummaged through a corner of the warehouse, soon emerging with some tattered ropes and several sturdy wooden planks. Skillfully, he wrapped the ropes around the planks, crafting makeshift shields, and handed them to the group. Take these. They may prove useful in critical moments. As they accepted the shields, their gratitude for Qin Feng grew. During the preparations, Li Ming approached Qin Feng and quietly inquired, Qin Feng, how far is that place you mentioned? Will there be more of those mutated zombies along the way? Qin Feng paused his task, raising his gaze with a profound look. I cannot say precisely how far it is. It will likely take a few days' journey. In this apocalyptic world, anything is possible. Mutated zombies are but one of the threats. There are other survivors, some of whom may not be as amicable as we are. A weight settled in Li Ming's heart, understanding that the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty and peril. Just as the group was ready to depart, a cacophony erupted outside the warehouse, as if something were moving. Instantly, they became vigilant, gripping their weapons tightly and nervously staring at the warehouse entrance. Li Ming whispered, Everyone, be cautious. We do not know what awaits us outside. Qin Feng swiftly moved to the door, peering through the crack, his expression shifting as he turned to the group. A horde of zombies is approaching, and there are quite a few. Their hearts raced, having just survived a brutal battle, their strength yet to be restored. The impending zombie swarm loomed large, and an overwhelming dread shrouded them anew. Their arduous journey in this desolate world had only just begun, with countless challenges awaiting them. The air inside the warehouse seemed to freeze, the sound of their heartbeats echoing in the silence, each thump hammering against their taut nerves. Li Ming's mind raced as he scanned every corner of the warehouse, seeking a strategy to confront the approaching horde. He knew that following the fierce battle with the mutated zombies last night, everyone was on the brink of exhaustion, faced with a multitude of ordinary zombies. A single misstep could lead to their demise. We cannot idly await our fate. Li Ming broke the silence in a hushed tone. We must utilize the warehouse and oppose layout to lure the zombies inside and take them down one by one. The group nodded in agreement, despite their fatigue. The instinct to survive spurred them to rally. Qin Feng hoisted his long knife onto his shoulder, his gaze calm and sharp. I will guard the entrance first. You all find your positions and prepare to support. He then strode toward the warehouse door, gripping the knife firmly as its blade glimmered ominously in the dim light. As the horde drew nearer, their chilling growls and dragging footsteps became increasingly distinct. Li Ming stood a short distance behind Qin Feng, clutching a metal rod he had picked up from the ground, his palms slick with sweat. Zhang Wei and Wang Chong positioned themselves on either side, wielding their makeshift shields and clubs, determination etched in their eyes. Xiaoyan remained by her injured companion and oppose's side, though fear still enveloped her. She gritted her teeth and picked up a stone, preparing to fight for her comrade's life when the moment arose. Here they come, Qin Feng shouted, as the warehouse door trembled violently under the zombies' assault, creaking ominously. With a thunderous crash, the door burst open, and a tide of zombies surged forth. Qin Feng was the first to strike, his long knife slicing through the air with precision, severing the head of the foremost zombie, as its body lurched forward before collapsing. Li Ming charged in, swinging the metal rod with force to repel another zombie. Zhang Wei and Wang Chen quickly joined the fray, using their shields to deflect the zombies' attacks before delivering lethal blows with their clubs. The warehouse erupted in chaos, the cries of battle intertwined with the zombies' howls, the stench of blood saturating the air. As the fight intensified, more and more zombies flooded in, and the group began to feel the weight of exhaustion. Li Ming felt a sharp pain as a zombie clawed at his arm, blood trickling down, but he pressed on, undeterred by the pain. In that moment, he spotted a larger zombie among the horde, its movements more agile than the others, an eerie glint in its eyes. This particular zombie seemed to direct the others, adjusting their attack patterns and applying immense pressure on the group. Everyone, be cautious of that larger one. It seems different, Li Ming shouted. The group's focus shifted to the imposing figure. Seizing the opportunity, Qin Feng lunged at the larger zombie, aiming his knife directly at its chest. The creature reacted swiftly, evading the blow before lunging at Qin Feng with its razor-sharp claws. A fierce struggle ensued, each combatant exchanging blows with ferocity. Through their combined efforts, the number of zombies began to dwindle. When the last zombie finally fell, the group collapsed onto the ground, panting heavily. The warehouse lay in disarray, the corpses of zombies strewn about, blood-staining the floor. Despite their injuries, they had successfully repelled the horde. Li Ming looked at his weary yet resilient companions. A wave of warmth surged within him. He understood that in this desolate world, as long as they stood united, there remained a glimmer of hope. Just then, their injured companion coughed a few times, slowly opening his eyes. Although his face remained pale, there was a spark of vitality in his gaze. I feel much better. His voice was faint, yet it ignited a flicker of hope among the group. Xiaoyan burst into tears of joy, tightly grasping her comrade and Apos' hand. Thank goodness, you are finally awake. Li Ming rose to his feet, gazing at the sky outside the warehouse. Sunlight broke through the clouds, dispelling some of the gloom. He knew the journey ahead was still laden with uncertainty and danger, yet at that moment, the seeds of hope had been sown in their hearts. They gathered their belongings and, under Chun Feng's guidance, set forth once more on their quest for safety and medical supplies. This time, they carried with them renewed courage and faith. The sun struggled to penetrate the heavy clouds, casting its light upon the path of the protagonists, yet failing to dispel the pervasive shadows of the apocalyptic world. The group trudged forward, weary but determined, following Qin Feng toward the unknown destination. Although the injured comrade had awakened, his frail state necessitated the assistance of two others to walk, undoubtedly slowing their pace. How much longer must we walk? Xiaoyan, exhausted, voiced her complaint, her delicate frame overwhelmed by the strain of their relentless journey. Li Ming approached her, offering a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Do not fret, hold on, and we will reach a safe place eventually. Though he spoke with conviction, doubt lingered in his heart, for the road ahead was long and fraught with peril. Qin Feng led the way, his gaze perpetually vigilant of his surroundings. Suddenly, he halted, straining to catch some faint sound. The others, noticing his sudden stop, paused in confusion. Did you hear anything? Qin Feng inquired softly. Everyone held their breath, listening intently, but aside from the whispering breeze rustling through the debris, nothing was discernible. Just when they thought Qin Feng had misheard, a distant, indistinct signal echoed from afar, crackling like the static of an old radio. Li Ming's eyes brightened. What is that sound? Qin Feng furrowed his brow, pondering for a moment before responding. It could be some kind of signal, perhaps other survivors nearby, or a signal transmitter. After deliberation, they resolved to follow the direction of the sound. As they journeyed, the ruins became increasingly dense, with collapsed structures and abandoned vehicles strewn about, obstructing their path. The distant growls of zombies occasionally pierced the air, instilling a sense of dread. To evade danger, they navigated cautiously through the wreckage, each step laden with hardship. As they drew closer to the source of the signal, the noise grew clearer. Suddenly, Zhang Wei pointed ahead and shouted, "Look, what is that?" The group gazed forward to see a partially collapsed building's rooftop, where a device resembling a satellite antenna emitted the signal. There appeared to be no signs of zombie activity nearby, yet they remained cautious as they inched closer to the structure. Just as they prepared to enter the building, hurried footsteps approached from behind. The group turned in alarm to find a ragtag band of armed individuals advancing toward them. The leader, his face adorned with a thick beard and a menacing glare, commanded, "Stop. Who are you? What are you doing here?" The atmosphere grew tense, the potential for conflict looming. While the mystery behind the signal inside the building deepened, Li Ming's heart sank, his nerves taut as he instinctively shielded his companions behind him. Gripping an iron rod tightly, his knuckles whitening from the pressure, Qin Feng slightly turned, his right hand subtly resting on the hilt of his knife. His eyes sharp and hawk-like, warily scrutinizing the intruders. "We are merely passing through. We heard the signal and wanted to investigate," Li Ming replied, striving to keep his voice steady as he met the bearded man's gaze. The bearded man scoffed, taking a step forward, the blade in his hand gleaming ominously in the sunlight. "Passing through? In this apocalyptic world, such simplicity is a luxury. This signal is ours. It would be wise for you to mind your own business and leave." His companions raised their weapons, poised for an attack, the tension palpable. Xiaoyan, hiding behind Li Ming, trembled slightly and whispered, "We should go." They Dawn and Apos, seemed friendly. However, Li Ming stood firm. Well aware that the signal might harbor hope for rescuing his companions and others, he could not afford to retreat easily. "Brother, we mean no harm. Our companion is injured and desperately needs medical supplies. We merely wish to see if the signal relates to his safe location or medicine," Li Ming stated earnestly, desperation flickering in his eyes. The bearded man frowned slightly, uncertainty flashing across his features. At that moment, a small, wiry man stepped forward and whispered something in his ear. The bearded man's expression shifted, revealing suspicion as he scrutinized Li Ming and his group anew. "You claim to have escaped from the city? Have you encountered someone named Wang Hu?" he suddenly inquired. Li Ming paused, quickly sifting through his memories before shaking his head. "No. We and Apos been too focused on survival to meet anyone by that name. Why do you ask?" The bearded man remained silent, lost in thought. After a brief interval, he raised his head and declared, "Here's the deal. You will accompany us inside. But if you attempt any tricks, do not blame us for being unfriendly." The group exchanged hesitant glances, yet ultimately decided to follow them inside. Under the direction of these strangers, Li Ming and his companions entered the half-collapsed building. The interior was dim and eerie, permeated with a damp, moldy scent. Cobwebs adorned the walls, and various debris littered the floor. They cautiously ascended the stairs until they reached the rooftop, approaching the satellite antenna apparatus. The signal was now clearer, crackling in the silence above. The bearded man approached an old computer, performing a few operations until the screen displayed a chaotic array of codes and images. What is this signal? Wang Chang could not contain his curiosity. The bearded man glanced at him, replying, "This is a distress signal we send out while searching for a potential cure. We have been here for several days without a response, hence our wariness upon your sudden appearance." Upon hearing the word cure, hope ignited in the eyes of the group. Li Ming eagerly asked, "A cure? Is there really a cure? Where is it?" The bearded man shook his head. "We are uncertain. We have only heard of a secret laboratory that may have developed a cure. However, its location is obscure, and we have yet to find it." At that moment, the screen flickered, revealing a blurred silhouette that spoke, "Warning, danger is imminent." Before the message could finish, the screen abruptly went dark, followed by the ominous growls of zombies approaching from below, the noise intensifying. Panic swept through the group as the new crisis descended upon them. The guttural roars of the undead surged like a tidal wave, engulfing them in terror. Li Ming and Appo's heart raced. He quickly scanned the surroundings, his mind racing to devise a plan. The oppressive gloom of the building seemed to amplify the atmosphere of the impending battle. "Quick, we must defend the staircase," Li Ming shouted, his voice echoing through the corridor. The bearded man and his companions reacted swiftly, clutching their weapons and rushing toward the stairs. Chen Feng and Appo's gaze hardened as he drew his long knife, positioning himself at the staircase and Appo's entrance in readiness for the oncoming horde. "I and Appo's hold the front. You all support from behind," Chen Feng instructed as he turned to the group. Li Ming nodded, signaling Zhang Wei, Wang Chang, and others to follow closely, while Xiao Yin and the other injured remained on the rooftop, searching for items to fortify their defenses. The first wave of zombies soon appeared at the staircase's turn, their grotesque features exuding a nauseating stench, bloodlust gleaming in their murky eyes. Without hesitation, Chen Feng swung his knife in a swift arc, cleanly severing a zombie and Appo's head, which rolled away as its body stumbled forward. Seizing the opportunity, Li Ming and Zhang Wei swung their iron rods to repel the oncoming zombies, while Wang Chang used his makeshift shield to block the attacks. In this life-and-death struggle, the two groups momentarily set aside their previous distrust, coordinating closely to combat the relentless tide of the undead. As the battle intensified, waves of zombies continued to surge up the stairs, and fatigue began to take its toll. Li Ming suffered a scratch from one of the zombies, blood streaming down his arm, but he pressed on, ignoring the pain. Amidst the chaos, the bearded man shouted, "Hold firm. We cannot let these monsters prevail." His voice resonated with strength, rallying the spirits of those around him. In the frenzied moments of battle, Li Ming noticed one particular zombie behaving unusually. This larger zombie moved with greater agility than the others and seemed to direct the surrounding horde, constantly adjusting their attack strategies. Li Ming and Appo's heart raced as he realized that this might be yet another mutated zombie. "Be cautious of that larger one. It is a mutated zombie," he warned loudly. Upon hearing this, Chen Feng immediately shifted his focus to the mutated zombie. Seizing the moment, he lunged towards it, his long blade aimed directly at its chest. The mutated zombie reacted swiftly, dodging the attack by sidestepping, then extending its sharp claws towards Chen Feng. He nimbly evaded, and a fierce one-on-one battle ensued between them. While the group fought valiantly against the horde of zombies, Wang Chang, in the midst of grappling with one, inadvertently discovered a hidden compartment in the wall beside the staircase. During a brief respite as the zombie was pushed back, he quickly opened the compartment, uncovering a tattered diary and a yellowed map. With no time to examine them closely, Wang Chang stuffed the diary and map into his clothing and returned to the fray. After a grueling struggle, the group finally managed to repel the swarm of zombies. The staircase was strewn with the corpses of the undead, and blood stained the ground. Exhausted, they collapsed onto the floor, panting heavily, their sweat mingling with blood as it trickled down their cheeks. "Phew, it's finally over," Li Ming sighed deeply, looking at his weary yet resilient companions, a warm current flooding his heart. He then recalled the hidden compartment Wang Chang had discovered and approached him, inquiring, "What did you find in the compartment?" Wang Chang retrieved the diary and map from his clothing and handed them to Li Ming. "I haven't had the chance to look at them yet, so I don't know if there are any clues about that secret laboratory." Upon hearing this, the others gathered around, their eyes filled with anticipation. Li Ming opened the diary, and the yellowed pages exuded an air of antiquity. The handwriting was somewhat blurred but still legible. As he turned the pages, a startling secret about a mysterious laboratory gradually came to light, heralding a new turning point in their survival journey. in this apocalyptic world. Li Ming slowly opened the diary, which emanated a musty aroma, the brittle yellowed pages making a faint crackling sound in his trembling hands. The group gathered around him, instinctively quieting their breaths, their eyes fixed on the blurred handwriting as if it were the only beacon of hope in this desolate world. The diary began with the daily accounts of a scientist, revealing the progress of research on a new type of virus, which undoubtedly was the root cause of this catastrophic apocalypse. As the diary and Apos' narrative unfolded, an astonishing revelation emerged. Hidden in a deep mountainous region on the city and Apos' outskirts lay a secret laboratory. Not only did it preserve the original samples of the virus, but it also likely contained the formula for an antidote. However, the laboratory was heavily fortified, fraught with various unknown dangers. A laboratory in the deep mountains. This could spell trouble, grumbled the bearded man, his brow furrowed with concern. He gazed at the distant, undulating mountains shrouded in gloom, as if he could already foresee the formidable obstacles ahead. Li Ming's gaze fell upon the last page of the diary, where a rudimentary map was drawn, corroborating the yellowed map Wang Chang had found. The map depicted a winding route leading into the mountains, marked with several conspicuous danger zones, some indicating zombie-infested areas, while others denoted unknown radiation zones. Regardless of the peril, we must attempt this, Li Ming declared resolutely, his eyes reflecting an unwavering determination. He glanced at his injured companions, then surveyed the weary yet hopeful expressions of the group. For their sake, and in pursuit of a cure for the virus to end this calamity, they had to press on. The others nodded in agreement, fully aware that this journey would be fraught with unimaginable peril. Chen Feng squinted thoughtfully at the map before stating, "We need to devise a detailed plan, charting our course based on the map and Apos' indications, and endeavor to avoid those hazardous areas. Moreover, we must replenish our supplies. We do not know how long this journey will take." The two groups of survivors began to collaborate earnestly on their travel arrangements. They took stock of their existing weapons and supplies, discovering that food and water were alarmingly scarce, and most of their weapons were damaged. Thus, they resolved to search for resources nearby, while also repairing and creating new weaponry. Over the next 2 days, the group split into 2 teams. Li Ming, Zhang Wei, and the bearded man ventured out to scavenge for supplies, navigating through abandoned streets and buildings while cautiously avoiding zombies, seeking anything that might prove useful. Chen Feng and Wang Chang remained at the building, utilizing the materials they had found to forge sturdier weapons and defensive gear. Xiao Yin and the other injured stayed on the rooftop to keep watch, ready to sound an alarm at the first sign of danger. The expedition for supplies did not unfold smoothly. They encountered multiple waves of zombie attacks, severely hindering their progress. On one occasion, while scavenging for food in an abandoned supermarket, a horde of zombies suddenly burst in. Li Ming and his companions quickly armed themselves and engaged in fierce combat with the undead. In the chaos, the bearded man suffered a claw wound to his leg, blood streaming down. Fortunately, their teamwork prevailed, and they successfully repelled the zombies, returning to the building with the meager supplies they had managed to gather. Upon their return, Chen Feng treated the bearded man's wound, and the group sat together, staring at their pitifully scant resources, their spirits heavy with despair. Yet, there was no time for lamentation, for according to the clues in the diary, their time was running short. If they did not swiftly locate the antidote, the virus would continue to mutate, leading to even more dreadful consequences. After a brief period of rest, the group donned their makeshift packs and armed themselves, embarking on the journey to the secret laboratory in the deep mountains under Li Ming and Apos' leadership. They followed the path marked on the map, heading into the unknown dangers ahead, each step fraught with hardship and uncertainty. The hidden laboratory seemed like a mysterious black hole, waiting for them to unveil its secrets, ultimately determining their fate and that of humanity itself. The overcast sky loomed like a heavy leaden slab, pressing down upon the group, seemingly foretelling the trials and tribulations to come. Li Ming and his companions, burdened with their meager belongings and wielding either worn or newly acquired weapons, stepped resolutely into the mountains. The path beneath them was rugged and uneven, strewn with debris and thorns, each step requiring careful navigation to avoid twisting an ankle or sustaining a cut. "Stay close. We have no idea what awaits us on this journey, and we cannot afford to fall behind," Li Ming admonished, glancing back at the others. His voice, weary yet infused with undeniable strength, resonated with conviction. The group nodded in agreement, their eyes reflecting a blend of trepidation for the unknown and an eagerness to survive. Not long after entering the mountainous terrain, they encountered their first wave of trouble. A massive fallen tree obstructed their path, its trunk too thick to move by sheer human effort. Li Ming furrowed his brow, scanning the surroundings for a way around the obstacle. At that moment, Zhang Wei noticed movement behind the tree and gripped his iron rod tightly, exclaiming, "Be careful. Something in Apos' lurking there." The group quickly assumed defensive positions, their gazes locked on the area behind the tree. Moments later, several zombies staggered out from behind it, their bodies covered in leaves and dirt, clearly having been trapped there for some time. Upon spotting the living, they instantly became agitated, roaring as they charged forward. "Go! Don't let them get close," Li Ming shouted, leading the charge against the zombies. He swung his iron rod, striking one of the zombies squarely on the head. The zombie swayed but did not fall. Instead, it lunged at Li Ming with renewed ferocity. Zhang Wei, seeing this, rushed in to provide support. The two coordinated their attacks, gradually gaining the upper hand. Meanwhile, the bearded man and the other companions engaged with several more zombies in a fierce battle. During the fierce battle, the man with the beard found his movement slightly hindered due to a leg wound that had yet to fully heal, nearly falling victim to a zombie and Aim's grasp. Fortunately, a companion nearby intervened just in time, repelling the undead with a wooden stick. After a grueling fight, the group finally vanquished the remaining zombies. Breathing heavily, they exchanged glances, each reflecting the weariness of their ordeal. Before they could regain their composure, a sudden drizzle began to fall from the heavens. The icy droplets struck their skin, eliciting involuntary shivers. "This rain is truly ill-timed," Wang Chang complained as water trickled down his cheek, pooling on the ground below. "There and Aim's no choice but to keep moving and find shelter," Li Ming replied, leading the way forward. The mountain path, now slick from the rain, made their progress increasingly arduous, demanding greater effort with each step. The downpour intensified, with large raindrops hammering the earth and sending sprays of water into the air. The group trudged through the rain, their vision becoming increasingly obscured. Suddenly, Chen Feng, who was at the front, halted, his gaze fixed ahead with heightened vigilance. "What is it?" Li Ming inquired. Chen Feng pointed into the distance, whispering, "There is movement up ahead, and it appears there is more than one." Following his gesture, the others peered through the curtain of rain and discerned several shadowy figures swaying ominously. As they drew nearer, the shapes became clear. It was a horde of massive mutated zombies, slowly advancing toward them. These grotesque creatures were over twice the size of ordinary zombies, their muscles bulging and exuding a menacing aura. A wave of dread washed over the group as they realized a far more formidable battle loomed ahead, and within these remote mountains, their chances of survival remained uncertain. The cold rain fell like bullets, striking their faces and mingling with the atmosphere thick with tension. Li Ming, gazing at the encroaching mutated zombies, felt his heart racing, each beat threatening to burst from his chest. Taking a deep breath, he endeavored to steady himself, rapidly devising a strategy in his mind. The sheer size of the mutated zombies, with limbs as thick as tree trunks, instilled a sense of foreboding. Conventional attacks would likely prove ineffective against them. "Listen carefully," Li Ming shouted, his voice somewhat fragile yet brimming with resolve amidst the storm. "These creatures are tough. Aim for their vital spots, concentrate your fire, and take them down one by one." Nods of agreement rippled through the group as they gripped their weapons tightly, rainwater cascading down, mingling with the sweat of anxiety. Chen Feng was the first to charge, resembling a leopard as he lunged at the horde, his long knife glinting with the cold light under the overcast sky. His target was a mutated zombie at the periphery. Seizing the moment, he leapt high, his blade slicing through the air toward the creature and Aim's neck. However, the zombie reacted swiftly, raising its thick arm to block the attack, leaving only a superficial cut on its forearm. As Chen Feng landed, he quickly sidestepped to evade the creature's counterattack, his expression grave. Seeing this, Li Ming and Zhang Wei immediately coordinated with Chen Feng, flanking the zombie and swinging their iron rods toward its legs. The rods struck heavily, producing a dull thud. The creature and Aim's legs trembled slightly but remained standing. It roared in fury, baring its grotesque teeth and lunging at Li Ming, the stench of decay emanating from its maw. Li Ming deftly dodged, causing the massive creature to stumble forward due to its own momentum. Simultaneously, the bearded man and other companions engaged in a desperate battle with additional mutated zombies. Despite his leg injury, the bearded man gritted his teeth, enduring the pain, and swung his long knife, striving to hinder the zombies' advance. His comrades worked in close concert, some using wooden sticks to target the zombies' lower bodies, while others seized opportunities to strike at their vulnerable eyes. As the battle escalated, rain, sweat, and blood mingled, and exhaustion began to take its toll. A mutated zombie capitalized on a lapse in Zhang Wei and Aim's defense, sending him crashing to the ground with a powerful blow. Zhang Wei fell heavily, blood spilling from his mouth as his iron rod clattered away. Li Ming, frantic to assist, found his path blocked by another zombie, just when despair threatened to overwhelm them. Wang Chang suddenly shouted, "Look over there." The group followed his gaze and spotted a small cave not far away. Though modest in size, it offered sufficient refuge from the zombies and Aim's relentless assault. Li Ming and Aim's eyes brightened, and he called out, "Everyone, retreat to the cave." quickly, heeding his command. The group fought as they retreated, making a dash for the cave. The mutated zombies, unwilling to relent, pursued them fiercely. Just as one zombie was about to seize Xiaoyan, turned back, plunging his knife deep into the creature and Apos' chest, buying her precious seconds to escape. At last, the group reached the cave, while Feng remained behind, using large stones to temporarily seal the entrance against the pursuing zombies. Exhausted, they collapsed within the cave, gasping for breath. The damp, dark space was tinged with a musty odor, yet at that moment, it became their sanctuary. Li Ming rushed to Zhang Wei and Apos' side, assessing his injuries. Zhang Wei and Apos' condition was grave, several ribs might be broken, and his complexion was ashen. Hold on, Zhang Wei. We and Apos' find a way to treat you, Li Ming assured, though his voice betrayed his concern. At that moment, as Wang Chang surveyed the cave and Apos' walls, he discovered peculiar symbols and patterns etched into the stone. Intrigued, he approached for a closer inspection. The markings appeared ancient, reminiscent of some long-lost script. A thought struck Wang Chang. Could this be related to the secret laboratory they were searching for? He quickly summoned Li Ming and the others, and they gathered around the wall, gazing at the enigmatic symbols, their minds brimming with curiosity and anticipation. Outside, the mutated zombies continued to batter the stones, producing a dull thud that served as a grim reminder that their peril had not yet subsided. Within the cave, a dim yellow light filtered through the cracks of the entrance, barely illuminating the weary and perplexed faces of the group. Wang Chang stood before the wall adorned with mysterious symbols, his fingers tracing the uneven grooves, seeking any semblance of familiarity. Li Ming and Feng leaned in closer, brows furrowed in concentration as they studied the arcane patterns. These symbols don't appear to be mere markings. Could they represent an ancient warning or a special guide to the secret laboratory? Li Ming murmured, his voice echoing softly in the cave, tinged with a barely perceptible tremor. Feng nodded slightly, his gaze intent. It is quite possible. The presence of such peculiar symbols in these remote mountains is no coincidence. Perhaps they hold the key to unraveling the mystery of the zombie virus. His eyes sparkled with determination amidst the darkness of this apocalyptic world. Even the faintest glimmer of hope was invaluable. The bearded man, limping over with his injured leg, bore a pallid complexion from blood loss and pain. Yet his curiosity remained undiminished. Regardless, we must decipher the meaning of these symbols. It could very well be a stroke of divine providence. The others nodded in agreement. Despite their physical exhaustion, their spirits were rekindled by this unexpected discovery. Xiaoyan remained by Zhang Wei and Apos' side, gently wiping the sweat from his brow with a damp cloth. Her eyes filled with worry. Zhang Wei and Apos' injuries left her anxious, yet she understood that uncovering the secrets of the cave wall might be crucial for saving him, and perhaps everyone. Wang Chang rummaged through his pack and retrieved an old notebook and a pencil, carefully beginning to replicate the symbols. His hands trembled slightly, not only from fatigue but also from the weight of anxiety. Each stroke carried the collective hopes of the group. Once he completed the sketches, he handed the notebook to Li Ming. Brotherly, take a look and see if you can discern any patterns. Li Ming took the notebook, seated himself on the ground, and placed the book upon his lap, diligently studying its contents. His gaze flitted back and forth between the symbols, at times furrowing his brow, and at others revealing a contemplative expression. Feng crouched nearby, engaging in discussion with Li Ming. As time ticked away, the dull, rhythmic sound of mutated zombies colliding against the boulders at the cave entrance persisted, reminiscent of a countdown, urging them onward. Suddenly, Li Ming's eyes brightened. Look, this symbol appears to recur several times, and each instance seems to follow a certain pattern. I suspect it could represent some kind of coordinates, or perhaps a code to activate a mechanism. Upon hearing this, the group gathered closer, their eyes brimming with anticipation. At that moment, the cacophony of impacts from outside abruptly ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. A sense of alarm rippled through the group as they instinctively tightened their grips on their weapons. Feng rose cautiously, casting a vigilant glance toward the cave entrance. Be wary, these zombies do not halt their assault without reason. Something must have changed. Before he could finish, a piercing shriek resonated from the cave entrance, followed by a violent shaking of the boulder. The group, filled with dread, realized that a few mutated zombies had somehow procured a sturdy tree trunk, employing it as a battering ram in their desperate attempt to breach the cave and Apos' defenses. With each strike, the air within the cave seemed to congeal, amplifying the sound of their heartbeats, each thump resonating like a hammer against taut strings. The boulder trembled violently under the relentless impacts, debris cascading down upon them. Li Ming focused intently on the notebook containing the mysterious symbols, beads of sweat dotting his forehead. He understood that every second was a matter of life and death. Everyone, remain calm and keep searching for a solution, Li Ming shouted through gritted teeth, his voice echoing within the cave, tinged with a slight tremor, yet resolute. His gaze swept urgently across the symbols in the notebook, seeking additional clues within the seemingly chaotic lines. Meanwhile, Chen Feng stood near the entrance, unsheathing his long blade, its edge glinting ominously. Ever ready to confront the moment when the zombies breached the cave. Could these symbols be connected to the interior of the cave? Mused a bearded man, wincing as he carefully traversed the cave, ensuring to scrutinize every nook and cranny. His voice, strained from anxiety and pain, belied an agile mind. The group dispersed, meticulously examining the cave. Xiaoyan remained beside Zhang Wei, gripping his hand tightly, her palm drenched in sweat, her eyes reflecting fear and helplessness. Yet she fought back tears, softly reassuring Zhang Wei, "Hang in there, we will find a way." Zhang Wei, pale and somewhat disoriented, nodded faintly upon hearing her words. Wang Chang, positioned before the cave wall, compared the symbols in the notebook with the actual carvings, endeavoring to discern connections from their arrangement and orientation. Li Gu, look at these symbols. Their angles seem to correspond with the cave's orientation. Wang Chang pointed at the wall, his voice laced with excitement. Li Ming hurried over, following Wang Chang's gesture, his eyes lighting up. Indeed, if we interpret these symbols as guidance, using the entrance as a reference point and aligning with the indicated angles and directions, we may uncover something. The group gathered around, hope igniting in their eyes. However, the external assaults from the zombies grew increasingly ferocious, and the fissures at the cave entrance now clearly displayed the twisted arms and grotesque faces of the undead. One zombie's arm reached into the cave, brandishing sharp claws that nearly grasped Chen Feng, who swiftly swung his blade, striking the zombie's arm. The creature let out a piercing howl of pain, retracting its limb. "We are out of time. Everyone, search quickly," Li Ming urged urgently. The group scattered along the cave walls, following the directional cues from the symbols. Suddenly, Xiao Yan spotted a slightly protruding rock formation that bore a striking resemblance to one of the symbols in the notebook. She pushed against it with all her might, but the stone did not budge. "Come help," she cried out. Li Ming, Wang Chang, and the others rushed over, uniting their strength to push the stone. Just as the zombies were on the verge of breaking through the entrance, the rock finally shifted, accompanied by a dull rumble, revealing a dark passageway on the opposite wall. "Quick, into the passage," Li Ming shouted. The group hastily assisted Zhang Wei as they rushed toward the opening. Chen Feng lingered at the back, vigilantly watching the entrance while slowly retreating. As the last person entered the passage, Chen Feng swiftly slipped inside. Almost simultaneously, the boulder at the entrance was breached by the zombies, who surged into the cave with a chorus of roars, yet the group had already vanished into the tunnel. The passage was permeated by a musty odor, and the walls glimmered with faint bioluminescence, barely illuminating their path. They hurried forward, their hearts heavy with a blend of fear and anticipation for the unknown. They understood that this passage might hold their hope for escape from the relentless pursuit of zombies. Yet it could also conceal greater perils. At this moment, they had no choice but to venture deeper into the unknown. As the secrets hidden behind the mysterious symbols seemed poised to be unveiled at the passage and Appos' end, the gap grew wider, the grotesque faces of the zombies becoming increasingly discernible. A new crisis loomed, and whether the enigmatic symbols on the cave walls could be the key to their salvation remained uncertain. Within the passage, the dim bioluminescence flickered against the damp stone walls, casting their silhouettes into distorted and eerie shapes. Li Ming led the way, his gaze sharply scanning the surroundings. Clutching a sharp wooden stick he had picked up from the ground, though this weapon felt feeble amidst the unknown dangers, it provided him with a semblance of safety. Behind him, the companions supported one another, moving quickly yet cautiously, fearful of disturbing any lurking threats. "Everyone be careful, this passage feels off." "We don't know what might be lurking," Li Ming whispered, his voice echoing with an imperceptible tremor. The group nodded in agreement, their faces grave with concern. As they delved deeper, the passage twisted and turned, presenting them with numerous forks. At each junction, they paused to deliberate, relying on their memories of the mysterious symbols and their general sense of direction to navigate the treacherous paths. At one intersection, Wang Chang noticed peculiar scratches on the ground, resembling the trail of some creature. The markings pointed toward the right passage. "Li Gu, should we take this route? Perhaps we might uncover some clues," Wang Chang suggested, his eyes glimmering with hope. Li Ming furrowed his brow, hesitating momentarily before nodding in agreement. The group proceeded down the right passage, the air growing increasingly heavy, saturated with a faint, nauseating stench reminiscent of the zombies outside, yet imbued with an inexplicable eeriness. As they advanced, a stone door emerged ahead, etched with the same mysterious symbols that adorned the cave walls. Under the glow of bioluminescence, the symbols appeared to writhe gently, exuding an aura of mystery. Li Ming approached, reaching out to touch the door, its surface chilling to the touch. He scrutinized the symbols, attempting to discern a method to unlock the door. Meanwhile, the bearded man discovered a recess beside the stone door, its shape strikingly similar to a key symbol they had previously noted on the cave wall. Everyone, come look. This might be a mechanism, he called out. The group gathered excitedly around the recess, their expressions filled with wonder and anticipation. Wang Chong rummaged through his backpack, producing a stone that closely matched the recess and Appo's shape, cautiously placing it within. The moment the stone settled into place, the door emitted a deep, resonant rumble, beginning to shift. The group tightened their grips on their weapons, bracing for the unknown that lay beyond. As the door fully opened, an overwhelming stench of decay surged forth, nearly suffocating them. As their vision cleared, they discovered a vast cavern beyond the door, shrouded in a green mist that seemed to ripple with the presence of unseen entities. What is this place? Xiaoyan asked in terror, her voice trembling. Li Ming took a deep breath, striving to maintain his composure. Regardless of what lies within, we cannot retreat now that we've come this far. Stay close and be prepared for any danger. With that, he stepped boldly into the cave, the others trailing closely behind. Venturing into this realm filled with uncertainty and peril, the secrets hidden within the cavern might profoundly alter their understanding of the zombie crisis and determine whether they could find hope for salvation for themselves and the world. The moment Li Ming entered the cave, a chill shot through him, as the green mist clung to him like a tangible entity, cold and damp. Behind him, his companions followed suit, each gripping their weapons tightly, their breaths heavy with anxiety. Stay close together. The mist is thick and our visibility is compromised. We mustn't get separated. Li Ming urged in a hushed tone, his gaze scanning the fog for any potential threats. They advanced cautiously, each step echoing ominously in the silence of the cave. Suddenly, a deep, guttural roar emanated from the depths of the mist, resonating with an oppressive weight. The group halted instantly, muscles tensed, eyes wide with fear. What was that sound? Xiaoyan stammered, her voice barely audible. Li Ming remained silent, tightening his grip on the wooden staff, signaling for everyone to prepare for a confrontation. As the roar faded, several massive figures began to materialize within the mist. They were grotesquely distorted, larger than the mutated zombies they had encountered previously, and covered in a moss-like substance that flickered in and out of visibility. Their eyes glowed with an eerie red light, fixated on the intruders as if warning them that they had trespassed into forbidden territory. Be cautious. These creatures are formidable. Chen Feng drew his long knife, its blade gleaming ominously in the dim light. His voice was steady, yet a hint of trepidation lingered in his tone. Li Ming inhaled deeply, shouting, "Everyone, spread out and target their weak points." The group quickly dispersed, confronting the mysterious beings. One of the creatures lunged first, charging toward the bearded man nearest to it with alarming speed. The man barely managed to block the assault with his knife, the force of the impact knocking him to the ground. Yet, through sheer willpower, he evaded the creature's lethal strike at the last moment. Seeing this, Li Ming rushed forward, thrusting his staff fiercely at the creature's leg. The beast howled in pain and pivoted to retaliate against Li Ming. He deftly sidestepped the attack while observing the creature's movements. He noted that despite their immense size and strength, their actions were somewhat sluggish and their attacks predictable. "We should target their leg joints. It may hinder their mobility," Li Ming shouted. The others, upon hearing this, adjusted their tactics and focused their efforts on the creatures and Appo's legs. After a fierce struggle, one of the beasts finally succumbed, crashing to the ground. However, the battle was far from over. As they caught their breath, a strange sound emanated from the depths of the cave, reminiscent of machinery whirring to life. Following the sound, they spotted a faint glow through the mist. Cautiously, they approached, discovering a colossal control panel adorned with bizarre symbols and flashing indicators. Li Ming stepped forward to inspect it closely. To one side of the console, he found a tattered diary, its pages yellowed with age and imbued with a musty odor. Trembling, he opened the diary, the faded script barely legible yet decipherable. As he read, a shocking revelation regarding the origins of the zombie virus began to surface. This global catastrophe had been orchestrated by a nefarious organization known as the Shadows, which sought to unleash chaos through the virus in a bid to seize control of the world and establish a new order. This cavern appeared to be a pivotal site in their early research and experimentation with the virus. "This is unfathomable. That someone would go to such lengths for power." Xiaoyan gasped, her hands covering her mouth, eyes brimming with tears of fear and rage. The expressions of the others mirrored her horror, deepening their understanding of the madness that plagued their world. Li Ming suppressed his fury and continued to scrutinize the diary, hoping to uncover more vital information. At last, he stumbled upon a passage detailing the progress of antidote research. According to the diary, deeper within the cave lay a hidden chamber containing crucial research data, potentially holding the key to developing an antidote. "We must locate that chamber. Only by obtaining the antidote can we end this disaster," Li Ming declared, his gaze resolute as he looked at his companions. They all nodded in agreement, their resolve firm despite the perilous unknown that lay ahead. Just then, a cacophony of noise erupted from outside the cave, signaling the approach of a large group. Alarmed, They gripped their weapons tighter, alert to the impending threat. Chen Feng crept to the cave entrance and peered through the mist, his expression darkening rapidly. This is bad. A group of armed personnel is approaching, and they seem to be searching for something. Li Ming's heart sank as he realized that the shadows had likely detected their movements and sent reinforcements to thwart them. Stay calm. Let us find a place to hide and observe their actions, Li Ming whispered. Swiftly, they scoured the cave for concealment, anxiously awaiting the unknown crisis that loomed ahead. Meanwhile, the hidden chamber that held the clues to the antidote felt tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly out of reach. Would they overcome the obstacles to find the hope needed to save the world? All remained uncertain. Within the cavern, an oppressive silence enveloped Li Ming and his companions like a heavy shroud. They held their breath, concealed behind massive stones and jagged walls, eyes fixated on the cave entrance. Each footstep from outside resonated like a hammer striking their taut nerves. Li Ming subtly shifted, his gaze sweeping over his companions, all bearing grave expressions. Though their weapons were rudimentary, they gripped them tightly, the only solace in their desperate plight. Chen Feng pressed close to the cave's edge, keenly observing the movements of the armed personnel beyond the mist. Clad in full tactical gear, they wielded assault rifles, their faces obscured by helmets, exuding an air of vigilance. Leading them was a tall man, his gaze sharp as an eagle and ablaze, methodically directing his team to spread out in a fan formation as they advanced into the cavern. In his hand, he clutched a map, which appeared to mark several critical locations. A chill ran through Chen Feng as he speculated that these locations were likely connected to the hidden chamber deep within the cave. Their numbers were too great, and their equipment was formidable. A direct confrontation would undoubtedly spell disaster for them. Lowering his voice, Chen Feng turned to Li Ming and spoke. Li Ming furrowed his brow, his mind racing as he contemplated a strategy. He understood that any misstep at this moment could lead them to an irreversible fate, yet the hidden chamber, which held the lives of countless individuals in the balance, was tantalizingly close and must not be abandoned. We need to divert their attention and find an opportunity to sneak around behind them. Heading deeper into the cave, Li Ming whispered back, his tone imbued with an undeniable resolve. The group nodded slightly, reaching a silent consensus. Just then, a small rodent, startled, darted from the corner of the cave, creating a faint sound against the stone wall. The armed personnel instantly became alert, their weapons pivoting toward the source of the noise. The leader gestured with his hand, and two subordinates swiftly approached the area, their steps measured and cautious. Seeing this, Li Ming's heart raced, and he exchanged a knowing glance with Zhang Wei. Zhang Wei understood immediately. He picked up a stone and hurled it toward the opposite end of the cave. The sound of the stone striking the wall echoed loudly in the stillness. The armed personnel's attention was drawn to this sudden noise, their focus momentarily scattered. Now's our chance. Go, Li Ming urged, dashing from their hiding spot toward the back of the armed personnel. The others followed closely, crouching low and trying to tread lightly. Chen Feng brought up the rear, his long knife poised for any unforeseen circumstances. However, their movement was soon detected by a sharp-eyed armed personnel. There, someone's over there, he shouted, raising his gun to fire. Chen Feng reacted swiftly, lunging towards the man, his knife slicing through the mist with a cold gleam. The armed personnel hurriedly raised his weapon to defend himself, the clash of metal resonating within the cave. Seizing the moment of chaos, Li Ming and the others quickened their pace, sprinting deeper into the cave. Behind them, the shouts and footsteps of the armed personnel grew closer. They navigated the intricate passages of the cave, twisting and turning in an effort to evade their pursuers. Yet, the armed personnel, equipped with professional tracking skills, relentlessly pursued them. As they turned a corner, Li Ming suddenly noticed a concealed opening beside the passage. Without a moment and ablaze's hesitation, he signaled for the group to crawl inside. They huddled in the cramped space, listening to the footsteps of the armed personnel lingering outside the entrance. Li Ming and ablaze's heart raced like a drum, sweat trickling down his forehead. He understood that this was merely a temporary respite. If the armed personnel discovered this opening, they would have nowhere to flee. In this perilous cave, the distance to the chamber harboring the antidote's clues remained an unknown, and a graver trial awaited them. Inside the narrow opening, the air seemed to thicken, suffocatingly oppressive. Li Ming and the others curled together, acutely aware of each other's rapid breaths and pounding hearts. Outside, the footsteps of the armed personnel struck like hammers, pounding on their taut nerves. Li Ming's palms were slick with sweat as he clutched his rudimentary weapon tightly, his knuckles whitening from the pressure. His eyes fixed on the opening, missing not a single sound. What if they find us? Xiao Yan's voice trembled, laced with fear, echoing softly in the confined space. The group remained silent, fully aware that any noise could invite deadly peril. Li Ming gently patted Xiao Yan and ablaze's shoulder, attempting to convey a semblance of comfort. Though his own heart was fraught with unease, time crawled by, each second stretching into eternity. Suddenly, the voice of the leading man echoed from outside. Search carefully. They can and ablaze have gone far. This cave is crucial to our organization and AMP.As plans. We must not allow them to sabotage it. Li Ming and AMP.As heart tightened. It seemed these armed personnel were closely tied to the Shadow organization and were well acquainted with the secrets of the cave. Just as despair began to settle over them, Qinfeng noticed a faint light seeping in from behind the small opening. He carefully moved aside the debris blocking his path and felt his way towards the source of the light. It turned out that this small opening was not a dead end. It connected to an even narrower passage, at the end of which glimmered what appeared to be a luminous mineral. "Follow me. There end AMP.As a way out," Qinfeng whispered excitedly. The other's eyes ignited with a flicker of hope as they cautiously trailed behind Qinfeng into the depths of the passage. The corridor was exceedingly narrow, forcing them to move sideways, the rough cave walls scraping against their clothes, producing faint sounds. Meanwhile, the armed personnel's search within the cave grew increasingly meticulous, gradually closing in on the direction they had taken. Li Ming and the others hastened their steps, navigating the constricted passage with difficulty. After an indeterminate time, the passage suddenly opened up, revealing a vast stone chamber before them. The walls of the chamber were embedded with glowing minerals, illuminating the entire space. Li Ming surveyed the surroundings and noticed a massive metal box nestled in the corner of the chamber, adorned with markings reminiscent of the mysterious symbols they had encountered earlier. A strong premonition surged within him. This box might be closely linked to the hidden chamber and the clues regarding the antidote. The group gathered around the metal box, their eyes brimming with anticipation. However, before they could thoroughly examine it, footsteps and voices echoed from the entrance of the chamber. Li Ming's expression shifted. He knew the armed personnel had caught up with them. At this critical moment, whether they could uncover useful clues from the metal box and successfully access the hidden chamber before the armed personnel arrived remained uncertain. The clash, which held the fate of humanity in the balance, grew ever more intense, each second steeped in peril. A sense of dread washed over Li Ming as he rapidly scanned the area, seeking a solution. Although the chamber was spacious, there was scarcely any place to conceal themselves, leaving the group entirely exposed to the impending armed personnel. He gripped his weapon tightly, feeling the tension in his companions, each prepared for a desperate fight. "Everyone, stay calm. Try to buy us some time, and let's see if we can find anything useful in this box," Li Ming urged in a hushed tone, his gaze never leaving the entrance. Qinfeng nodded slightly, stepping in front of the group, unsheathing his long knife, its blade glinting ominously in the glow of the minerals, emanating an air of deadly intent. The footsteps of the armed personnel grew increasingly audible, each step resonating in the hearts of the group. At last, the leading man appeared at the entrance of the chamber, flanked by several armed subordinates, their dark muzzles immediately trained on Li Ming and the others. The man and AMP.As gaze was as frigid as a winter and AMP.As pool, scrutinizing the group with a slight, derisive smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You certainly have a knack for evading capture, but now you have nowhere left to run. Surrender peacefully, and perhaps I will consider granting you a swift end." His voice was low and chilling, reverberating within the chamber. Unfazed, Li Ming met the man and AMP.As icy stare. "You think we would ever surrender? Not a chance. You wretched pawns of the Shadow organization have taken countless innocent lives for your nefarious plans. Today, we will not allow you to succeed." The man's derisive chuckle faded, replaced by a fierce glare. "Then don't say I didn't warn you." He raised his hand slightly, signaling his subordinates to prepare to fire. Just at that critical juncture, Wang Chong suddenly shouted, "Wait, don't you want to know what we discovered in this cave?" The man's actions halted, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Seizing the moment, Wang Chang continued, "We have found critical clues regarding the origin of the zombie virus in the AMP.As, Shadow and AMP.As, organization and AMP.As plans, all contained within this metal box. If you kill us, these clues will vanish forever." The man furrowed his brow, clearly moved by Wang Chong and AMP.As words. After a moment of contemplation, he instructed his subordinates, "Do not fire yet. Restrain them and ascertain what lies within the box." Several armed personnel cautiously approached, guns aimed at the group, herding them into a corner of the stone chamber. Meanwhile, Li Ming and his companions seized the opportunity to swiftly surround the metal box. They meticulously examined the enigmatic symbols on its surface, endeavoring to discover the method to unlock it. Li Ming discerned that the symbols seemed to constitute a complex combination lock that required a specific sequence of touches to open. Recalling the patterns he had previously observed on the cave walls and stone doors, a sense of clarity began to form in his mind. "Everyone, follow my lead. I will count to 3, and we press the corresponding symbols together," Li Ming whispered to his companions. They nodded slightly, anxiously awaiting his command. At the other end of the stone chamber, the armed personnel were closely monitoring their every move, the atmosphere taut with tension, as if a tightly stretched string could snap at any moment. An ultimate game of life and death, entwined with the fate of humanity, was about to unfold in this confined space. Taking a deep breath, Li Ming's heart thundered as his gaze remained fixed on the arcane symbols adorning the metal box. The oppressive tension enveloping the stone chamber was palpable, with the armed personnel and APOS weapons trained on them. Any sudden movement could provoke a lethal response. Yet, at that moment, Li Ming and his companions had cast aside their fear of death, understanding that obtaining the clues within the box was pivotal to halting this apocalyptic disaster. 1, 2, 3. Li Ming called out softly yet powerfully. In unison, they extended their hands, pressing down on the corresponding symbols of the metal box in the prearranged order. Instantly, the box emitted a deep, resonant hum, and the symbols began to shimmer with an otherworldly glow, pulsating as if engaged in some intricate calculation. The armed personnel, witnessing this, grew increasingly anxious. The leading man stepped forward, gripping his gun tighter, and bellowed, "What are you playing at? If you dare to pull any tricks, none of you will leave here alive." Ignoring him, Li Ming remained fixated on the metal box. As the pulsating light intensified, the lid began to tremble, seemingly on the verge of opening. Suddenly, a brilliant beam of light erupted from the box, illuminating the entire chamber as if it were daytime. The group instinctively shut their eyes, and when they reopened them, they discovered the metal box had been unlatched. Inside lay a crystal radiating a ghostly glow, surrounded by ancient scrolls and a document. Li Ming reached for the document, and as he opened it to read a few lines, his expression turned grave. The document meticulously detailed the Shadow Organization and APOS' process for creating the zombie virus, including its formula, transmission pathways, and the initial experimental site. More crucially, it mentioned a secret chamber located in the core area of the cave, which housed the ultimate antidote to the virus and a device capable of obliterating all research data pertaining to it. Activating this device was the only way to end this calamity once and for all. "I found it. Clues about the secret chamber," Li Ming exclaimed with excitement. Hope ignited in the eyes of his companions upon hearing this. However, the armed personnel were not about to let them escape easily. The leading man, sensing the gravity of the situation, shouted furiously, "Get that stuff from them. We cannot allow them to thwart the organization's plans." With that, he charged towards Li Ming, followed closely by his subordinates, triggering an intense struggle for the possession of the document. Li Ming clutched the document tightly, standing his ground alongside Chen Feng and the others against the armed personnel's onslaught. Chen Feng wielded his long knife with fierce determination, each strike pushing back the encroaching foes. Zhang Wei and Wang Chang utilized nearby stones and debris to hurl at the attackers, buying precious time for their companions. Although Xiaoyan and the other injured individuals had limited fighting capability, they cheered from the sidelines, seeking opportunities to assist. The battle escalated, both sides inflicting and sustaining injuries. While dodging an attack, Li Ming was struck in the arm by one of the armed personnel, nearly causing the document to slip from his grasp. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he thrust the document into the hands of a bearded man beside him and urged, "Take the document and find a way to the secret chamber. We'll hold them off." The bearded man nodded vigorously and sprinted toward the exit of the chamber. Seeing this, some of the armed personnel split off to pursue him. Meanwhile, Li Ming and his companions put forth every ounce of strength to block the remaining enemies. They understood that this was an ultimate confrontation concerning the fate of humanity, and no matter the cost, they could not allow the Shadow Organization and APOS' scheme to succeed. The bearded man's success in delivering the document to the secret chamber had become the sole beacon of hope for them all. With the document that embodied humanity's hope in hand, the bearded man raced through the labyrinthine passages of the cave. His footsteps were frantic and hurried, each stride kicking up dust from the ground. Behind him, the shouts of the pursuing armed personnel echoed like haunting specters, relentlessly trailing him. He dared not pause for even a moment. His mind was consumed with a singular thought. He must deliver the document to the secret chamber and unlock the door to salvation. The cave was dimly lit, relying solely on the sporadically glowing mineral deposits along the walls to illuminate his path. The bearded man's gaze darted through the flickering shadows, striving to discern his direction. However, the labyrinthine corridors twisted and turned, each bend a potential dead end or a passage to survival. Utilizing his hazy recollections and a rough understanding of the cave's layout, he navigated through the maze. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl reverberated ahead, echoing ominously through the corridor. The bearded man froze, heart racing. Cautiously, he approached the source of the sound, only to find a massive mutated zombie blocking the path. This creature was far more terrifying than any he had encountered before. Its bloated body bore a grotesque purplish hue, emanating a putrid stench. Its eyes glimmered with a blood-red glow, and upon sensing his presence, it slowly turned its head, fixating on the bearded man. Swallowing hard, the bearded man gripped a sturdy wooden stick he had picked up from the ground, his only weapon in this dire moment. He understood that facing this mutated zombie head-on would likely lead to his demise, But with armed personnel hot on his heels, retreat was not an option. Taking a deep breath, he attempted to calm his racing thoughts, his mind racing to formulate a plan. Meanwhile, in the stone chamber where fierce conflict had ensued, Li Ming and his allies continued their battle against the armed personnel. Despite his arm wound, blood dripping to the ground, Li Ming fought with unwavering resolve. The iron rod in his hand swung with fierce momentum, each motion imbued with desperation, forcing back the advancing enemies. Chen Feng and Appo's knife had become dulled from the fray. Yet his skillful technique and agility rendered him an insurmountable obstacle for the foes. He adeptly evaded bullets, using the stone pillars and debris for cover, seizing every opportunity to strike decisively. Zhang Wei and Wang Chang, though armed with rudimentary weapons, worked in perfect harmony, one attacking while the other defended, providing mutual support. Xiao Yin and the other injured individuals did not remain idle. They scoured the area for anything to use against the adversaries. Even a mere stone became a weapon in their quest to assist their companions. The battle had reached a stalemate, both sides fatigued but unwilling to concede. Li Ming and Appo's thoughts were consumed with concern for the bearded man and Appo's safety. He knew their side had to hold the armed personnel at bay long enough to buy the bearded man sufficient time to escape. The armed personnel received orders to ensure that Li Ming and his companions could not disrupt the organization's plans at any cost. Thus, a life-and-death confrontation ensued within the confines of the narrow stone chamber, where every strike and defense bore the weight of humanity's future. Meanwhile, deep within the cave, the bearded man faced off against the mutated zombie in a moment charged with tension. Whether he could overcome this formidable challenge and successfully locate the secret chamber remained steeped in uncertainty. In the depths of the cave, the atmosphere grew palpably tense as the bearded man confronted the mutated zombie, the air seemingly frozen in place. The creature emitted a deafening roar, its sound waves reverberating through the narrow passage, causing a persistent buzzing in his ears. Its massive form loomed like a mountain, each movement sending tremors through the ground. Dust swirling in the dim light. Gripping a wooden stick tightly, the bearded man's hands trembled with exertion and anxiety, his knuckles turning white. He understood that a direct assault held no promise of victory. Cunning was paramount. His gaze flicked around the chamber, searching for anything he could use to his advantage. At that moment, he noticed several loose boulders along one side of the passage, and an idea sparked in his mind. The mutated zombie lunged first, its gaping maw revealing sharp fangs as it charged towards him, propelled by a foul gust of wind. The bearded man deftly sidestepped the attack, narrowly escaping, and swung his wooden stick towards the zombie's leg. The impact echoed with a dull thud but only caused the creature to stagger slightly. Enraged, the zombie attacked with renewed fervor, its powerful arms swinging wildly, generating a fierce wind. Seizing a fleeting opportunity amidst the chaos, the bearded man dashed towards the boulders. With all his might, he heaved one of the larger stones, straining against the effort. The boulder creaked ominously as it began to shift. Realizing his intent, the mutated zombie pivoted and charged at him. In a desperate effort, the bearded man pushed the boulder towards the zombie, and with a heavy momentum, it struck the creature's leg. The zombie howled in pain, losing its balance and crashing to the ground. Without hesitation, the bearded man sprinted past the fallen zombie. Continuing his race towards the secret chamber, he glanced back to ensure the zombie was not pursuing him before allowing himself a moment's relief. Yet he was acutely aware that danger still loomed, as the armed personnel could close in at any moment. Meanwhile, the battle within the stone chamber intensified. Li Ming's iron rod became increasingly burdensome after prolonged use, and the wounds on his arms bled profusely, staining his clothing. Nevertheless, his gaze remained resolute. Each swing of the rod was imbued with a fierce determination, compelling the armed personnel to hesitate. Chen Feng, too, bore several wounds, sweat mingling with blood as it streamed down his face. Despite his battered long knife, his exceptional skill and indomitable spirit rendered him a formidable barrier against the armed personnel. He adeptly maneuvered through the chamber's complex terrain, seeking weaknesses in the enemy's defenses, and each strike he delivered inflicted significant damage. Zhang Wei and Wang Chang coordinated seamlessly, functioning as a cohesive unit, one attacking while the other defended, rendering the armed personnel's efforts futile. Xiaoyan and the other injured individuals joined the fray, hurling collected stones and debris with precision to disrupt the enemy's movements. The armed personnel began to falter under the relentless resistance, and the leader, filled with mounting anxiety, recognized the dire consequences if Li Ming and his allies succeeded in thwarting their plans. Thus, he gritted his teeth and issued a final, desperate order: eliminate them at all costs. Tension escalated as both sides prepared for the impending confrontation, with the bearded man's timely arrival at the secret chamber poised to be the pivotal factor in determining humanity's fate. He raced through the cave passage, his breath ragged and erratic, each inhalation threatening to rupture his lungs. The documents clutched in his hand were soaked with sweat, yet still bore the weight of his unwavering conviction. The dim light of the cave flickered like a specter as he rushed forward, heralding the impending turning point of destiny. Suddenly, a massive fissure appeared in the passage ahead. Its width far exceeding his reach, plunging into an unfathomable abyss that concealed endless dangers. The bearded man abruptly halted, his heart pounding violently in his chest, as if it would burst forth. Desperately scanning his surroundings for a way to traverse the chasm, he found only smooth cave walls and scattered rubble. Just as panic threatened to overwhelm him, the approaching footsteps and shouts of the armed personnel echoed ominously behind him. Resolute, he clenched his jaw and made a bold decision. He noticed several sizable rocks at the edge of the fissure, which could potentially serve as the foundation for a makeshift bridge. He swiftly crouched down, grasping one of the larger stones, and summoned all his strength to push it towards the chasm. The rock scraped against the rough ground, producing a harsh sound as it gradually fell into the abyss, raising a cloud of dust. He continued, moving another stone, repeating the same arduous task. One by one, the stones were pushed into the chasm, gradually forming a precarious bridge. However, time was of the essence, and the voices of the armed personnel grew increasingly near. He had no time to reinforce his makeshift structure. Taking a deep breath, he stepped onto the shaky bridge, moving cautiously, each step taken with utmost care, fearing that a single misstep could send him plummeting into the depths below. Concurrently, the battle in the stone chamber reached a fever pitch. Li Ming's iron rod felt heavier with each swing, demanding immense effort, yet his determination remained unyielding. Seizing an opportunity, he summoned all his strength and struck a soldier's arm with the rod, the sound of shattering bone echoing through the chaos as the weapon fell from the soldier's grasp. Chen Feng darted like a black lightning bolt among the armed personnel. Despite the blood seeping from his wounds and staining his clothes, his movements remained agile and decisive. The battered long knife in his hand still radiated an intimidating aura, each strike posing a lethal threat to his adversaries. Zhang Wei and Wang Cheng fought back-to-back, their coordination forming an unyielding defense. Zhang Wei wielded a wooden stick to block direct attacks, while Wang Cheng used a shield to deflect strikes from the side. Their seamless teamwork made it exceedingly difficult for the armed personnel to breach their defenses. Xia Yin and the other injured individuals exerted every effort from the sidelines, hurling stones and debris at the armed personnel. Though their strength was limited, these seemingly insignificant attacks disrupted the enemy's movements at critical moments, buying precious time for their comrades. Under the relentless resistance of Li Ming and his allies, the armed personnel suffered heavy casualties. The leader, sensing the dire situation, grew increasingly frantic, brandishing his pistol and shouting in an attempt to rally his troops. However, the resolve of Li Ming and his companions only intensified, as they understood that this battle determined the survival of humankind, leaving no room for retreat. As the fierce conflict raged on, the bearded man finally succeeded in crossing the fissure. Without pausing to catch his breath, he continued towards the secret chamber. At that moment, he drew closer to his goal, while Li Ming and his allies faced their most perilous moment yet. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, shrouded in uncertainty. The bearded man raced through the narrow passage, the rough cave walls scraping against his arms and leaving trails of blood, yet he remained oblivious. His focus solely on the unknown chamber ahead, the last hope for humanity to escape the shadow of the zombie virus. With each step taken, dust was kicked up from the ground, mingling with his hurried breaths to form a hazy veil in the dim light. Suddenly, a deep roar echoed ahead, reverberating through the corridor and causing a painful ringing in his ears. The man with a scruffy beard halted, a sense of foreboding surging within him. As the sound drew nearer, an enormous, foul-smelling mutated creature slowly emerged before his eyes. This beast dwarfed any zombie he had encountered before, its muscular limbs supporting a body as formidable as a mountain, with blood-red eyes gleaming with a predatory glow in the darkness. Instinctively, the scruffy bearded man tightened his grip on the battered wooden stick in his hand, fully aware that it might prove futile against such a powerful mutant. His heart raced, and his mind raced even faster, seeking a strategy to confront the looming threat. At that moment, he noticed a recess on the side of the corridor, cluttered with debris seemingly left by previous occupants. An idea sparked in his mind, and he dashed toward the depression, rummaging through the scattered items. Meanwhile, the battle within the stone chamber reached its most brutal phase. Li Ming's iron rod finally succumbed to the relentless blows, snapping under the strain. Yet, he did not waver. Picking up a fallen dagger from the ground, he continued to engage the armed personnel in close combat. His eyes reflected unwavering determination, each strike of his knife imbued with the spirit of mutual destruction. Shun Feng's wounds multiplied, blood nearly saturating his entire body, yet his movements showed no signs of slowing. With sheer willpower and exceptional martial skill, he charged through the armed figures like a wounded beast, wielding a battered long knife that remained a source of terror for his foes, each swing conjuring a rain of blood. Zhang Wei and Wang Chong were also nearing their physical limits. Although their coordination remained instinctive, their movements had noticeably slowed. The armed personnel seized upon their vulnerabilities, gradually tightening the encirclement. However, the two men displayed no fear, supporting one another back-to-back as they held their ground, their eyes revealing a fervent desire for victory. Xiao Yin and the other injured individuals shouted hoarsely from the sidelines, hurling stones and debris at the armed assailants. Though their attacks inflicted no significant damage, they disrupted the enemy and Oppo's movements at critical moments, granting their comrades precious moments to breathe. As the two sides found themselves locked in a stalemate, the scruffy bearded man discovered an object resembling a flare among the debris. Without a moment in Oppo's hesitation, he pulled the pin, and the flare shot forth, casting a blinding light that illuminated the entire corridor. The mutated creature, startled by the brightness, emitted a painful roar, momentarily incapacitated. Seizing the opportunity, the scruffy bearded man charged towards the creature, deftly sidestepping it amidst its confusion, continuing his sprint toward the secret chamber. In the stone chamber, the sudden burst of light momentarily stunned everyone. Li Ming seized the chance to attack, thrusting the dagger into the chest of the leading man. The leader's eyes widened in terror as he attempted to evade, but it was too late. As the dagger pierced his body, a cry of anguish escaped him, and he slowly crumpled to the ground. The armed personnel, witnessing their leader's demise, fell into disarray, fleeing in all directions. Though exhausted, Li Ming and his companions did not let this opportunity slip away. They pursued the retreating armed personnel, driving them out of the cave entirely. Just as they exhaled a sigh of relief, the scruffy bearded man finally located the entrance to the secret chamber. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the door, and a brilliant light surged forth from within, illuminating the entire cave, a sign that humanity's fate was finally turning. Positioned at the threshold, the scruffy bearded man was silhouetted against the radiant light, his figure appearing increasingly fragile. Yet, in that moment, his gaze was resolute, carrying the weight of humanity's destiny as he stepped into the chamber. Inside, the brilliance emanated from a massive control console at the center, adorned with peculiar symbols and pulsating data. The walls were lined with countless glass containers, each filled with a mysterious liquid that emitted a soft glow, casting faint projections of complex genetic patterns onto their surfaces. Before the scruffy bearded man could examine the scene in detail, Li Ming and the others arrived in haste. Relieved to see his companions safe, the scruffy bearded man pointed at the console, urgently stating that it must be related to the antidote for the virus, and they needed to figure out how to operate it quickly. Li Ming stepped forward, scrutinizing the console, recalling the symbols he had seen in the documents from the metal box, attempting to establish a connection. At that moment, the console emitted a rapid beeping sound as a virtual projection screen slowly ascended, revealing the image of a weary yet determined elderly man. The old man spoke, his voice raspy yet powerful. "Young ones, your arrival here signifies that the wheels of fate have begun to turn. This chamber houses the formula for the zombie virus antidote and data on its source. By initiating the destruction program, you can halt this calamity. However, to commence the program, a special password must be entered, and the clues to the password lie within the mysterious symbols you have encountered along the way." Upon hearing this, everyone immediately gathered around. Chun Feng wiped the blood from his long knife as he recalled the sequence and positioning of the symbols. Zhang Wei and Wang Chong joined the discussion, striving to piece together the clues from memory. Meanwhile, Li Ming compared the symbols from the documents with those surrounding the console. After a tense analysis, they finally determined the password. Taking a deep breath, Li Ming entered the password into the console. Instantly, the lights in the chamber began to flash erratically, and the glass containers emitted a low hum. A red button popped up on the central console, inscribed with the words "Initiate Destruction Program." Li Ming looked to his companions, whose eyes brimmed with determination and anticipation. Slowly, he extended his hand and pressed the button. As the button was pressed, the entire chamber began to tremble violently. Outside the cave, the world, once ravaged by zombies, seemed to sense this surge of power. Fierce winds howled, and dark clouds began to dissipate rapidly. Within the chamber, a colossal energy sphere gradually formed, absorbing the surrounding light and data, growing larger by the moment. Within the energy sphere, the genetic patterns of the virus disintegrated and shattered, signifying the impending obliteration of the zombie virus. However, before the energy sphere could fully coalesce, a violent shaking ensued, causing rocks to fall from the ceiling of the chamber. The activation of the program had destabilized the cave. "Everyone, get out," Li Ming shouted. The group swiftly made their way to the exit of the chamber, supporting one another amid the falling debris, and just as the chamber was on the verge of collapse, they burst forth into safety. As they emerged from the cave, sunlight streamed through the clouds, dispelling the last remnants of gloom. In the distance, the zombies appeared to be drawn by some unseen force. their movements gradually slowing until they finally collapsed. As time passed, the darkness wrought by the zombie virus began to dissipate, and the earth started to revive, heralding a new dawn for humanity. Li Ming and the others gazed at this scene. Weariness etched on their faces, yet smiles of relief blossomed. They knew that this life-and-death struggle against the zombie virus had culminated in humanity's triumph, and they had become the heroes who saved the world.